This is a tutorial which will make you master technologies like React.js, Typescript, Shadcn UI, and most importantly, Tanstack Query by building this beautiful weather app called Climate. With features like current location weather and forecast, a graphical representation for next 24-hour temperatures, ability to search weather of any city in the world, and we will use powers of Tanstack Query to implement features like search history and adding a city to favorites through mutations. Plus, I will also show you how you can go on and deploy this app on a custom domain like this, so you can showcase it as a legitimate project, and we can also switch between light and dark mode along with this fully responsive and beautiful user interface that we will be building using React.js and Shadcn UI. Alright, so I've opened VS Code over here, and I'm gonna open my terminal and quickly go on and initialize a new React app. So I'm gonna say npm create wheat at latest and press enter. And now it's gonna say proceed, yes. What's the name of the project? I'm gonna create my project in this folder itself. So I'm gonna press dot, package name, yep, let's keep it climate. I'm gonna select React with TypeScript. And don't worry if you don't know anything about TypeScript, I will explain everything in this video as well. And you can see our new React app has been initialized right over here. Let's run npm install so that it installs all of the necessary dependencies inside of this package.json file right here. Right, so meanwhile that's happening, I'm gonna go on and clean up some things like deleting this assets folder, we're not gonna need it. Cleaning everything inside of app.css, everything inside of index.css, inside of app.tsx, I'm gonna remove all of these things and remove this use state. And right here inside of the return, I'll remove everything and I'll simply have a div which will say, subscribe to Roadside Coder, which you should if you haven't yet. All right, let's go on and run this now. npm run dev. Let's click on this link. And there we go, subscribe to Roadside Coder, great. So now we're gonna install Shadcn UI. I'll go to Google and search Shadcn UI, and there we go. So Shadcn UI is basically pre-built components that we can import inside of our app, just like you can see right over here, right? So if you click on these components over here, and actually first of all, let's go and click on installation and we will install it inside of our Wheat app over here. So we've already done npm create Wheat, and let's go and install Tailwind now. So I'll open a new terminal over here and paste it right here. There we go. Now we need to do npx Tailwind CSS init-p. By the way, Shadcn UI is built on top of Tailwind CSS. That is why we need to do all of these steps. So as I have done npx Tailwind CSS init-p, it will create this configuration file for Tailwind CSS. Now next, we have to copy all of these three things and keep it inside of our index.css so that it works fine. And also this content line over here, we have to keep it inside this tailwind config.js file. Okay, let's save it. After this, we have to edit our tsconfig.json and we have to add these compiler options. Don't worry, these are just one-time thing. You won't have to touch this file again. So over here, yeah, we have files, preferences, and right below this, I'm gonna paste this compiler options over here. Okay, then after this in tsconfig.app.json, we have to copy both of these things, base URL and path. So tsconfig.app.json, let's paste it right here and also add comma over here. Okay, what else? Now we have to install these at types/node since we're using TypeScript over here. So let's go on and install this one over here as well. Okay, now what else? In the wheat.config.ts, we have to, replace this file. So I guess we already have it. Let's just replace it with this. Okay, I think this should do it. What else? Okay, and we are pretty much done. Right now, we're gonna go on and initialize Shadcn UI inside of our project. So make sure, so if you're watching this tutorial in future, make sure to go through this documentation once of installing Shadcn UI so that you can make sure that, nothing is updated. So okay, there we go. npx Shadcn at latest init. Now it's gonna ask us to proceed, yes, and it's gonna ask us few questions. So which style do you want? I'll say New York. I'll say neutral. Do you like to use CS variables? Yes. And I think this should set up everything for us automatically now. There we go. Project initialization completed. And yeah, I think that's it. Now we can go on over here in the components. And you can see we have different components when it comes to Shadcn UI. Like for example, we have this accordion component over here, alert component over here, right? So let's first go on and install this very simple button component, which has different variants as well. Like you can see, like this is secondary variant, destructive, outline, right? Ghost variant. So we have bunch of different types of buttons offered by Shadcn UI. So how do we install it? We can go on and copy this line and paste it inside of our terminal. And now you're going to see it will create a components folder right here. So it's installing the dependencies, and yeah, it has created this components folder inside of it, a UI folder, which will be, reserved for Shadcn UI components. So there we go. It has created a button component over here. And again, we don't need to worry about what this is all about. Just close it. And to use this component inside of our app, just go to, let's say, app.tsx. And let's say below this, I'm going to create a button, and make sure to import this from /UI, right? And let's just say subscribe and save it. And now if I go back over here, you're going to see we have the subscribe button right here. If I say variant destructive and again go back, yep, you can see the button has turned red, right? Shadcn UI components that we will be using to build out whole of our app. And you'll understand why Shadcn UI is so much trending these days and such a hot skill to be mastered. So you know what, let's just go on and install all of the components that we will be using when it comes to, Shadcn UI. So we've already installed button. I'm going to use the alert component, to show any alert inside of our app. We're going to use a card component for different cards, that weather or forecast card. I'm going to use command for our search. I'm going to use the scroll area for our favorites. I'm going to use the skeleton to show the loading. Sonar for our, toasts. So press enter, and this will go on and install everything inside of our app. Okay, installing dependencies. Great. So it has installed it. Amazing. So now what I want to do, first of all, let's go on and plan out our app, right? So we are inside this app folder, and this page is multi-page app, right? It has a my locations, or a dashboard page where we can see all of our favorite locations and the temperature for our current location, the forecast of our current location. Similarly, we're going to have a cities page as well, where we can see the weather for that particular city, right? So we're going to have different routes. And when we have to create different routes inside of our app, we have to use something called as React Router DOM in React, right? So I'm going to say npm install React Router -DOM. Now, meanwhile, this is installing. I'm going to go on over here. Let's remove this div, and you can see it has installed already. I'm going to say browser router, and it's going to be imported from React Router DOM. Make sure you import it from here only. Let's remove this button for now. And this is going to wrap whole of our app. And inside this, I'm going to create a layout file, or, a layout component, which will contain something like header, our children, or whatever the app is, and the footer as well, right? So inside of our components, don't create it inside of UI, just create it inside of this components itself. I'm gonna say layout.tsx, RAFCE. I'll say layout, and this layout is going to take children as a prop, and it's going to render these children right over here. And for the types over here, I'll just take props with children, which comes from React, and I'll say import type props with children from React. Okay, so right here inside this layout, I'm gonna have a header, we're gonna have the children, and then I'm gonna have the footer as well. Let's give this some class name of background gradient to bottom right. That is from top to bottom right. We're gonna give this a gradient, so it will simply be from background to muted. So here from background to muted basically means that we have defined like Shadcn UI has defined some background color or muted color in its configuration. So it's going to take the background color and it will go all the way to the muted color. And it's going to handle, dark mode and light mode, everything for us automatically. We're going to have a header component right here. And after that, I'm going to add a main tag over here, and I'm going to wrap my children with this main tag. And right here, I'm going to say class name to be minimum height of screen, which is minimum height of 100 viewport, so that it takes whole of our screen. I'm going to add a container class, which basically provides different breakpoints when our screen size changes and provides better responsiveness. MX auto, so that everything is in the middle. Padding horizontal to be 4 and padding vertical to be 8. Let's check it out. So let's go on and import this layout right here. Let's import it from component /layout. I'm going to say hello for now. And let's go back and see. Yeah, hello. Okay. And you can see because of that container, we have some gap right here. Okay. Now coming back to layout, let's create our footer as well. So I'll say footer, and I'm going to have a div inside of it with a p tag, which will say made with love by roadside coder. For my footer, I'm going to give this some class name of border top backdrop blur, so that we can see a little bit of background as well. For our div, I'm going to give the class name of container margin horizontal to auto, so that everything is centered, padding horizontal to be 4, text is going to be in the center, and text gray is going to be 200. Let's see how it looks like. If I scroll down, okay, there we go. Let's give this some padding vertical to be 12 as well, and actually I'll just make it a little bit dark, so let's say 400. And now let's see. Okay, looks a little bit better. I think I want to keep a dark theme by default, so we will implement that as well. Let's just search it over here. If I say dark mode, you can see it's gonna ask us for what. I'm gonna say wheat, and you can see it has given this context theme provider.tsx, which will help us to keep our app inside the dark mode. Again, we don't need to understand what's going on over here. This is one-time configuration. Shadcn UI will take care of all of these things, and we can right out of the box provide dark mode and light mode functionality inside of our application. So if I just copy this up and go back inside of over here, let's just create a new folder for our context, and I'll create a new file called theme provider.tsx and just paste this component right here. All right, so now whenever we want to change our theme, we just have to import this use theme function right over here, and it will change the theme according to what we have provided it. Let me just show you right here. So if I just close it and go back to our app.tsx, we need to import this theme provider over here. So theme provider, and wrap whole of our app with this. And over here we can say default theme. It can be dark, light, or system. So let's just say dark. And now if I go back, you're gonna see our app is now in dark mode. Awesome. Now one thing that we can see over here, this background is blending with the above background. So over here, I'm gonna apply this property, supports backdrop filter. That is, if backdrop filter is supported inside of a browser, background to be 60%. So basically what's happening over here is we are applying 60% opacity to our background, so that it looks something like this. It has provided with 60% opacity, so it made it a little bit darker with this background variable. And again, if you're confused, these variables are right over here in the index.css. So all of these things, all of this configuration is done by Shadcn UI to make our life super easy, right? If we make it light mode, it will adapt to it accordingly. Okay, that's cool. Again, let's go on and create both of our pages as we were talking about. We had installed React Router DOM. So create different routes inside of our app. I'm gonna use routes from React Router DOM, and inside of this we're gonna create different routes. So route, it's gonna say path to be when path is slash, and it is a self-closing tag as well. Let's just import it first from React Router DOM. So path, when it's slash, I'm gonna render a element right over here, which is going to be our dashboard page. So for pages, I'm gonna create a separate folder. So pages, let's get a new file called weather dashboard.tsx, and we're gonna have another page for our individual city. So let's create a new file for city-page.tsx. Okay, let's just provide some dummy code for both of them. So I'll say RAFCE weather dashboard, just like that, and same for city as well. So RAFCE city page. Okay, let's go to our app.tsx, and right here I'm gonna say weather dashboard. Let's duplicate it. I'm gonna create one page for our city as well, like individual city. So for that, I'm gonna say city, and after this is going to be a dynamic route, right? We don't know what the name of the city will be. So I'll say colon, and we're gonna say a variable called city name. So this thing right here in this route can be dynamic, and I'll say city name. Oops, sorry, city page. Yeah, and I think that should have configured both of the pages. So yeah, since we are on the dashboard, like we're on the slash page, so it shows the dashboard. If I say city slash whatever, right? Let's say Kanpur, and press enter, we are on the city page. Awesome. So what I now want to do is I want to create my header. Now let's work on the header. Let's display all of the different logos and stuff. But before that, you can click the first link in the description down below and you will land on Hostinger. So if you noticed, I have hosted this app on this climate.roadsidecoder.in domain, right? So let me show you how you can get your own custom domain as well. So this project looks professional on your resume. And right now the biggest Black Friday sale of the year is on. So I don't want you guys to miss on this opportunity. Because Hostinger is the only brand in India to provide affordable hosting with great features like free domain, email, unlimited SSL, etc. And the best part is that they have a new data center in Mumbai now so that we can get great speed and uptime. So now I'm going to click on this claim deal button over here and you can see they have multiple different options. So let me choose this premium web hosting and it will take you to this page over here where you can select the duration for your web hosting. If you're getting started, you can either choose 12 months plan or 24 months plan. But if your pocket allows, definitely I would recommend you go for this 48 months plan because this is the most affordable plan out there. And not just this, I've got you guys sorted with my own coupon code. So just click on over here, have a coupon code and enter roadside coder, click on apply and boom, you get an additional 10% off. Amazing. Let's click on continue over here and let's go on and sign in over here. There we go. I've logged in successfully. Let me just enter my details and click on continue. Alright, so we are inside of our dashboard now and let's quickly claim our domain. So I'm going to enter roadsidecoder.in and you can see we have a bunch of different domains over here to choose from. So let's click on check availability and yep, our domain is available. Let's claim the domain. Let's just complete the registration by entering that this is my personal domain. Let's enter my details. And after you're done, just click on finish registration and it's going to show you the summary of your details. Click on this checkbox and complete registration. There we go. Our domain has been secured. We can just skip over here and here it is. Here's the dashboard for our domain. Now this might take some time like 10 to 20 minutes to get your domain secured for Hostinger. So meanwhile, let's go on and set up our premium web hosting. And it's gonna ask me a few questions. So let's just give me this for me. I want to create a website. What do you want to create a website with? You can also choose Hostinger's website builder if you want. So I'm gonna skip that for now. And I'll choose my roadsidecoder.in domain. Let's select my country, which is already selected, India. And now it's gonna be initializing our website for us. And there you go, we're done with it. And you can see over here, it's gonna show us that our domain is being connected. It might just take around 12 minutes.
A few moments later.
And great, our domain is connected. You can see our website is running smoothly. They also have a 30 days money back guarantee and a great 24/7 customer support in case you get stuck anywhere in this process. So okay, let's go back to our React app and we're gonna come back to Hostinger when we have to host our app. So I'm gonna go back to our layout. So right here, I'm gonna say header. And it's going to be a self-closing tag and obviously this doesn't exist yet. So I'll create a file over here in the components called header.tsx, RAFCE header. Let's wrap this in a header tag for correct semantics. And let's go on and import this header over here. Okay, looks good. Let's go back to this header file. Now in the header we are going to display some logos, right? So either you can use your own logo or you can go to my GitHub repository by clicking the link in the description down below. And over here in the public folder, I have two logo files, both for, dark mode and light mode. So just click on over here and click on this download button and import it inside of your public folder, just like this, logo PNG and logo2 PNG, right? Okay. Now here in the header, inside of this, I'm going to have a div to wrap everything. Then I'm going to have a link tag over here. When we click on this link tag, we will be routed back to our home page, right? So I'll say link to, and I'll provide slash over here, slash route. And inside this, I'm gonna import my logo. So I'll say image tag, and it obviously takes an src, which I'll say slash logo dot png. For all tag, I'll say climate logo, and class name will be height of 14. Let's check it out. Okay, looks pretty good. Below this link right here, I'm gonna have another div which will wrap our, let's just say search. I'm gonna comment it out for now, and theme toggle, which will help us to switch between dark and light mode. Okay, we will work on this next, but let's first go on and style this. So I'll say class name to be sticky, top to be 0, z index to be 50 so that it remains above everything else. So width is going to be full. Border is going to have some, we're going to have some border bottom. And I'll say BG background to be 95% opacity, some backdrop blur as well. And some padding vertical to be 2. Let's see how it looks like. Okay, looks good. And again, similar to our footer, I'm gonna add this backdrop filter. So right over here. Yep. So that when we scroll down, yep, you can see we have some blurry effect over here, right? For this div right here, I'm gonna simply provide some class name of container, margin horizontal to be auto so that everything is in the middle, some display flex, height to be 16, and items are going to be vertically centered and justify between so that items are are in the both ends of our container, and padding horizontal to be 4. Let's see. Yeah, that looks much better now. So now if we want to toggle our theme, what I'll do, I'll say use theme, and this will be imported from @context/theme provider. Make sure you import it correctly. And over here we will have const, and this will provide us with this theme and set theme. So I'll just take theme over here. And if the theme is dark, I'm going to display the other logo. So over here, I'm going to add the condition that, let's just remove this. I'll say if theme is equals to dark mode, then I'll display the /logo to PNG, else we will display /logo to PNG. Okay. And over here for our theme toggle, I'm going to have a div. And inside this, let's just say toggle for now. And I'll add a on click over here so that we can change our theme when we click on it. So I'll just take set theme over here, and let's add a condition over here so that we don't have to write it again and again. So if it's dark, I'm just going to simply replace with this variable, right? So now let's take this set theme over here, and I'll say set theme. If it is dark, then make it light, else make it dark. Okay, let's go on and see if it works. If I click on over here, yup, awesome. You see, we have implemented dark and light theme successfully, and it was so easy using Shadcn UI, right? Let's go on and add some icons for implementing this dark and light theme. So inside this div, I'm going to say if it's dark, I'll display this sun icon. So this comes from Lucid React, and Lucid React comes inside of Shadcn UI, right? So I'll display this sun icon, which will have some class name of height 6 and width 6. Text color is going to be 500. By default, rotate will be 0. So if you remember in the intro video, I showed you it will rotate as an animation when we are switching the themes, right? So it's by default, the rotate will be 0 and transition to be all. Similarly, I'm going to have another icon for moon as well, just like this with height 6, width 6, but this will have different color. Let's just import moon over here. Rotate 0, transition all. So now if I go back, if I click on it, yep. Currently it's static. Let's just give this animation. So in this div right here, I'll have a class name, and I'll actually, keep it inside of backticks. I'll say display flex, items to be center, cursor to be pointer, transition is going to be on transform, duration is going to be 500. All right. Now we need to add, those rotation with respect to is dark. So I'll add a template string over here. I'll say is dark. If it's dark mode, then I'll rotate by 180 degree. Else I'll say rotate 0. Yeah, I think this looks good. Let's go on and see. If I click on over here, yep, we have such a beautiful animation right here. Great. So now before going on and working on our weather dashboard and all of these things, right, we need to configure React query first along with our API that we are going to be using inside of our project, right? So I'll go and say search Tanstack Query or React Query. There we go. So basically Tanstack Query is a powerful asynchronous state management for TypeScript and JavaScript apps, which makes our job super easy when it comes to APIs and stuff. It manages everything right out of the box, things like caching, which takes so much of our time. We can manually configure all of these things as well, that we want to fetch this data, or if we don't want to fetch this data, just like I showed you in the intro, right? Once a city is visited, we're not gonna, refetch that city unless the data has become stale, right? So, okay, let's click on read the docs and click on installation. So this is how you can install it, npm install. So let's copy it, and I'll go on over here and paste it right inside of my terminal. Now let's go back and see how we can configure React Query inside of our React app. So inside of quick start, we have to use this query client provider, and we have to provide this query client inside of it. Okay, let's just take this thing Go back and it has already finished installing. Inside of app.ts, I'll wrap whole of my app in this query client provider. Let's just move this at the very bottom, the closing tag. Let's import it from Tanstack Query. And this query client is going to be a variable. So const query client equals new query client. Let's just see what it is. Query client, yeah. So query client. We're going to be importing it from Tanstack/React Query. And also, if you want to gain knowledge of every single feature about React Query and much in-depth information about React Query, I've created a separate video on this topic as well. But if you don't want to watch that, don't worry. I will discuss most of the things inside of this tutorial as well. Okay, now apart from this, we have something called as DevTools coming from React Query as well. So if I click on this DevTools over here, we need to install React Query DevTools. Just copy it and install it over here. So basically this thing is just like if you have used Redux in the past, it provides us DevTools, right? Which enables us to see different things inside of our app, right? The flow of our app basically. So you can import the DevTools like this. Let's copy it up and let's import it right here. And to import it, let's just copy this and over here I'll paste it, right? That's all. Now if I go back to my app, you're gonna see it will have an icon, yep, just like this, to see different flow of data inside of our app. But don't worry about it right now. I'm going to show you later on when we go on to fetch something inside of our app. Now let's see what is going to be the API that we will be using. So we'll be using this Openweather API and click on this Openweather API. Okay, so we're actually going to be using 2.5. So let's click on API over here. And if you scroll down, this current weather data, click on API doc. Yep, this is the exact API that we will be using inside of our app. So let's just first go on and sign in so that we can get the API key. And I'm in. Click on this API keys, and over here you can generate your API key. Just enter name, like whatever name that you want over here, and click on generate. Like I'll say climate and click on generate. And there we go. It has generated a new API key for me. Let's just copy it up and I'll go back to my app and create a new file .env. And over here, I'll create a variable wheat underscore openweather underscore API underscore key and paste the value right over here. That's it. We don't need to touch this .env now. This is the API key which will enable us to fetch the data from the Openweather API. All right, now as I showed you, we're going to be using this API, right? So this is how we're basically going to be using it. We're going to be fetching our latitude and longitude with respect to our current location, and we're going to provide it to this /2.5/weather API, this lat and long parameters over here, right? And this will provide us the result. Let's see. Yeah, you can see example API response over here. It'll provide us the weather, the base, the main, like temperature, feels like temperature minimum, temperature max, visibility, wind, and whole lot of different things over here, right? But one thing that it doesn't get right sometimes is this name of the city, right? So for this thing, I'm going to be using a separate API, that is geocoding API right here. So click on over here, this please use geocoder API. So yeah, this is the geocoding API that we will be using, and this will actually be used for searching the different cities with respect to the city name. But we want to use this reverse geocoding to get the name of the city, to get the accurate name of the current city. So it's /reverse, right? We'll provide it latitude and longitude, and it will return us with this response. All we need to worry about is the name of the city. Okay. Now we have knowledge of how the API works. Let's go on and configure this API inside of our project. So right here in the SRC, I'm going to create a new folder for our APIs or API. And I'll create a new file called config.ts. And this will basically contain the API configuration. So I'll say export const API underscore config. And these practices that I'm about to show you in this video are production grade practices that big companies use. So if you learn to understand or to write code in this manner, everyone will appreciate your skills inside of the company, right? So I'll say base underscore URL. So these things make our job very easy in long run. So in the base URL, I'm just gonna provide this base URL of api.openweathermap.org, which is this thing right over here, right? And after that, we can add different things later on. So I've just provided a base URL for this. I'm gonna provide for geocoding API as well. So for geocoding API, it was this reverse geocoding. Yeah, this one. I'll just copy it up until this 1.0. Yeah, then I'll have the API underscore key. So how do we import our API key? I'll say import dot meta dot env, and our API was wheat underscore Openweather API key, right? I'm gonna have some default params, which will simply say the units, which I'll keep as metric, right? You can keep different types of units with respect to, whatever you prefer. And you can check it from documentation over here. And app ID will be our Openweather API. Okay, cool. So that's our API configuration. Now let's define different API endpoints. So I'll say new file for weather.ts, and actually one more file for our types. So I'll say types.ts. Let's go inside of over here, weather.ts. Now over here in this file, I'm about to create a class for managing all of our API endpoints. And it could be possible that a lot of you might not have used class in the past, which is a very important concept for our front-end interviews as well. Like for example, if I create a class over here called weather API. Now inside of this, I'm going to define, let's say, get current weather, get forecast, let's say reverse geocode, different things. But all of them will have one thing in common, and that will be a function over here. Let's say I'll create private create URL. This function right over here, create URL function. Now this thing cannot be accessed from outside, and this is only for functions inside of this class itself. And this adds a layer of privacy to our code. So make sure you're aware of all of these concepts. I'll explain you that in this video as well. But I've discussed this along with other important concepts in my front-end interview preparation course as well, which is the only course that you will ever need to prepare for your front-end interviews. So make sure you click the link in the description down below to check it out. If you enter coupon code weather, you're gonna get flat 55% off inside of our course. Okay, cool. So I'll create this private create URL. I'll create one more private function called fetch data, right? This one will be creating the URL for us. This will be responsible for fetching the data. And apart from that, we're gonna have different functions like get current weather. This will be an asynchronous function, by the way, and get forecast and reverse geocode, right? These three will be a public function, can be accessible from the outside, but these two will be private functions. Let's see what these are all about. So create URL. This will basically take an endpoint. So we have two endpoints over here, right? If you go to config, we have base URL and geo. So it's gonna take a endpoint, which is going to be a string, and it's gonna take different params. It's going to be a record with string, comma string, or number. So a record type basically means that this will be an object with the key of string, and value can be either string or it can be a number. Now inside of this function, I'm gonna return our endpoint, right? So let's just take a backtick and template string, I'll say endpoint. And after this, I'm gonna convert all of these params into search params, right? So I'll say const search params equals new URL search params. And inside of this, I'll first provide my API key. So I'll say app ID to be API config. So I'm going to import this API config that we created right here, dot API key. And it will take all of the params. So basically we're going to provide the app ID over here in this as search param. And if there's anything else over here, like, latitude, longitude, etc. So simply right here after this question mark, I'm going to say search params dot to string. That's all. And this will create our URL. And we will be using this function in all of these three functions over here. What about this fetch data? So fetch data, we don't know what the type is going to be, right? So I'll say T over here, that it's going to be a dynamic type. It can be anything with respect to what we define. And it's going to take a URL, which will be a string. And it will return us with a promise, which again, we don't know the type of. So I'll say T over here. Now we will get this URL, right? And also this will be an asynchronous function. So right here, I'll say const response equals await fetch, and we're going to provide the URL over here. We're going to fetch this data inside of this URL. I'll say if response is not okay, then throw the error, weather API error. But if everything is okay, I'm going to return response.json. That's all. All right, great. So now after this, let's work on our get current weather API, right? So this will take latitude and so I'll take lat and long over here, and let's just define coordinates type, which doesn't exist yet. So I'll go inside of my types.ts. Here I'll say export interface coordinates, which will be lat and long. Both will be number. So I've created over here because we're going to be using it in multiple different places. So import it over here. Now inside of it, this will be the /weather API endpoint, right? So I'll say const URL and let's create the URL. So we're going to use this create URL function. So I'll say this dot create URL and it's going to be taking the endpoint. So I'll provide the endpoint inside of backticks API config. First I'll take the base URL /weather. Oops, sorry, it will be outside /weather. Second thing, it's going to take some params over here. So params will be lat and long. So lat will be lat dot to string. Similarly, I'm going to have for my longitude as well and my units. So units, I'll just import it from API underscore config dot default params /units. Okay. And also, by the way, this will return us a promise, right? So I'll say colon promise, and the promise will contain the weather data, right? So what's the weather data? So if you go back to my geocoding API, sorry, not my geocoding, the Openweather geocoding API, you're going to see over here, they have given the format of the data over here. Where is it? Yeah, there we go. This is the format of the data. So we have to create the type for it, right? For different, like for coordinate, for weather, for base, for main. So I've already done this for you guys. So if I go back to the types.ts, first of all, I'm going to create the type for weather condition. So this weather condition, it will have ID, main, description, and icon. So I'll have ID of number, main will be string, description is string, icon string, right? For all other types of things inside of this weather data, I've created these types. Don't worry, I'll explain it as well. So inside this weather data, we're going to have first coordinates. We have already created the type coordinate, right? This lat long. So I'm going to import it right over here for weather, this weather condition. For main, I have things like temperature, feels like, temp min, temp max, pressure, humidity, the wind, this information about the sunrise, sunset, and the country, name, and the date, right? Just like that. Yeah, so these are the main things that I'll be needing over here. So that's why I've created it in this format. So let's take this interface and provide it to this promise right here. Let's import it. And in the end, we will have this URL made with us, right? So let's fetch it now. So I'll say return this dot fetch data. You see, we have created this fetch data. So now I think by this point, you will be getting to understand how scalable we're making this app. So by the way, this long will be over here along with this latitude, longitude, right? So we're going to be using different things in different places, like reusing those things, right? So fetch data, and this will take first the type. You can see we have provided dynamic type over here, right? So this type will be weather data that we just created, and this will take this URL. So URL, right? That's that. That is all we need to do over here. And you know what? Let's just take this and I'll actually copy and paste it over here and replace this get forecast with it, because it's going to be very similar to this. It's going to take latitude and longitude, this coordinates, but it's going to be /forecast. Instead of weather data, forecast. Instead of weather data over here, this will be forecast data. So forecast data. And again, we're going to be going on creating it. But I guess most of the things will stay the same. Okay, so let's first see this /forecast API inside of the documentation. So if I go back over here, so if you scroll down, we have this 5-day /3-hour forecast. Click on over here in the API docs. Yep, /forecast API. It takes latitude, longitude, and the API key. And if you scroll down, yep, we have different things inside of this response. Let's go on and create the type for it. So I'll go back to my types.ts, and we're going to be needing very limited things when it comes to this. So we have created this interface forecast data, and over here we have this list that is an array. So this will be the array of different forecast for that particular place, and it will also have the city. So for the city, we'll have name, country, sunrise, and sunset information. So for this main, I'm going to take out this main from our weather data that we have already created right over here, right? So it's going to be exactly the same. It's going to be the weather, which again we have already created right over here. Yep, this weather condition. And it's going to have wind information, which again we have already created inside of it, right? And the date text, which is going to be a string just like this. Right, so simple enough types over here. Let's go on and take this and import it right here. And there's that's our forecast API. Again, let's duplicate it. It's going to be very similar for our this reverse geocode API as well. So let's go on and open this docs actually. So this geocoder API for reverse geocoding. Yeah, this is the one /reverse. It's going to take the latitude and longitude. That's what it's taking right here. It's going to return us this geocoding response type, which we have not created. So let's see what it will contain. It will have an array. And for one single object, it will just have the name, the local names, latitude, longitude, and the country. Okay, this type is pretty simple. Let's go to types.ts. And right here in the bottom, I'll create this type of geocoding response, interface of geocoding response. So name, local name, again is going to be an object with key and value of string types. Latitude, longitude is going to be number, country, and state will be optional. Not all places have a state, right? So let's close it and let's import it right here. And this will actually be now in the API config. This will be a geo API, right? And it will be reverse. So it will have latitude, longitude. Instead of units, I'm gonna have limit of 1. That is whatever the first object is. And this geocoding response will actually be an array. So I'll just say array, just over here for this one as well. Right, so obviously if it's providing us with one child, it's still going to be in the array format, right? So that's why. And yeah, that's that. We have created this weather API class. Let's create an object out of this class now. Let's create a new instance. So I'll say export const weather API equals, I'll say weather API equals new and the class weather API, right? And this is the only thing that we will be needing now to, access our API endpoints. Great, then let's go to our weather dashboard and start building the logic for getting our current location and rendering all of the weather data related to it. All right, so right here in this weather dashboard page, inside this div over here, I'm gonna have another div. Also, first of all, let's just plan this out as well. So we're gonna have our favorite cities rendered right here. Let's just comment it out for now. Inside this div over here, I'm gonna render a h1 tag with my location, and let's have a refresh icon below this, right? And below this div, I'm gonna render the current and early weather. Okay, so let's render that button as well. So button imported from component/UI from like Shadcn UI button, right? And inside this, I'm gonna have the icon of refresh CW. Let's save this and check it out. Okay, yeah, that's exactly what we wanted. For this button, I'm gonna have the variant of outline. The size is going to be of icon. On click of this button, I'm gonna call a function called handle refresh, which obviously does not exist yet, so I'm gonna comment it out for now. And I'll say disabled. Whenever we are fetching the weather or forecast data, it's going to be disabled, right? So I've commented out for comment this out for now as well. Let's just give this refresh button a class name of height 4 and width 4. And let's see. Yeah, that looks good. For this title right here, I'll give the class name of text Excel, font to be bold, tracking to be tight, so that things are a little bit closer to each other, like text is close to each other. Class name for this div is going to be flex, items to be center, and justify to be between, so that they are on the far ends of each other. Yeah, just like that. And for this div, I'm gonna say space y to be 4, so that they have some vertical spacing as well. Cool. Let's see if the dark light mode is working. Yep, it is working on both of these as well. Let's keep it in dark mode, else I'll go blind by the end of this video. Okay, so now actually I'm going to be creating a custom hook over here for fetching my current location, right? That is one of the good practices that you should be, using while developing your application. And again, all of these things related to JavaScript, React, performance optimization, everything I've covered in my front-end interview prep course. So go and click on the link in description down below to check it out. So I'll have a hooks folder right here, and we will be creating different types of hooks inside of this folder. First one will be for getting our location. So use dash geolocation dot tsx. And inside this, I'm gonna say export const, or actually export function. Let's name it use geolocation. Now, what is a custom hook? So custom hook is basically a simple function in React, but it has the powers, all of the powers that React has, like states, like use state, use effect, etc., and basically render a component inside of it, and all of those things, right? So custom hooks is a very powerful feature inside of React. Inside this, I'm going to create a use state called location data. By default, it's going to have a object with values like coordinates, error, is loading, etc., right? So let's create a type for this. So I'll say geolocation state, and let's import this coordinates type that we already created. So import type coordinates. So this will have coordinates, error, and is loading state. So let's provide this state to this use state just like this, and make sure you've imported use state from React as well. Right, inside of this, let's give some default values to all of these three things, which will just be null, right? Null for coordinates, error, and is loading will be true by default. Now inside of this, I'm going to be creating a function. So const get location, and this function will be called as soon as our app is loaded, right? So over here, I'll say use effect, and inside of it takes a callback and a empty array. So when the app is loaded, I'm going to call this get location function, and this will help us to get the location. And in the end, I'm going to return my location data. So location data and the get location function. We have that refresh button, if you remember, so that we can manually refresh our location. So let's just spread this location data, whatever it is. Let's go and start working on this get location function. Now, first of all, to get our location, we need to set this is loading state to true, right? So what I'll say set loading data. I'll take the previous data, whatever that's in the previous data, I'll render it over here. Is loading is going to be true, and error is going to be null by default, right? Then after this, I'll say if. So we have this navigator API default inside of JavaScript, right? So I'll say not navigator dot geolocation. Again, this is inbuilt inside of JavaScript, or you can say inside of our browser. So if this is not there, that is user has not given either permission, or we don't have the location data for some reason, I'll put some error over here. So set location data, and inside this I'll say coordinates to be null, and error will say geolocation is not supported by a browser, and I'll simply return it. That is, if this object itself is not present, then we will simply return it. Then after this, if that is not the case, I'll say navigator dot geolocation dot, and we will have a function over here that is get current position. Inside this will take a callback actually. So callback, and this will take the current position. So position, and then I'll say set location data, and inside this I'll set the position from this position object. So I'll say coordinates. Inside this we have lat long, right? So lat position dot coords dot latitude. Similarly, I'm going to do that for longitude as well. So for longitude, I'll say coords dot longitude. Let's add a comma over here as well. And then simply after this, I'm going to say error to be null and is loading to be false as well. Now, after this callback, we have a second param over here as well. So I'll say comma, and you can see error callback. So I'll have a error callback over here, which will simply take the error, and we'll decide what type of error this is. So I'll first of all take the error message variable, which will be a string by default. And after this, we have different error codes actually inside of it, right? So I'll define a switch case with error.code. So if the error.code is permission denied, so you can see this is, since this is an inbuilt library, we have permission denied as 1, position unavailable, timeout, different errors, right? So if it's permission denied, I'll add some message that location permission denied, please enable location access. Similarly for unavailable, same for timeout, and we have a default message as well, that is an unknown error. And then after this, I'm going to simply say set location data to be coordinates null, and error message, I'll just set it inside of my state, and is loading will be false. Great. And now after this, we can provide some more options to this. That is like enable high accuracy, I'll say true. Timeout, how long it needs to try out before timing out, so I'll say 5 seconds. And maximum age is going to be 0. Okay. And yeah, I think this should be pretty much it. That should help us to fetch our geolocation. So let's take this hook right here, go back to our weather dashboard, and on the top, I'm going to say const equals use geolocation. Let's import it right here. And this will give us a bunch of different things like coordinates, error, get location, and is loading. Let's go and see if our coordinates are being fetched. So I'll say log and coordinates. Let's go to our browser, and it's going to ask us for our location now. See, I'll say allow. Let's go to our inspect. So you can see we are getting this latitude and longitude right here. I've blurred this because I don't want to leak my exact location, right? Great. We have this handle refresh function over here as well, right? So let's just create this handle refresh, and we will call this get location if you want to refresh our locations. Handle refresh equals, and inside this function, I'll say get location. And if we have our coordinates, I want to refetch the weather data. So I'll just comment it out for now, reload weather data. We have not worked on it yet, so that's why I've just kept it empty for now. Cool, then let's make use of this is loading and other things. So first of all, I'll say if location, let's just rename this thing. So is loading, I'll say location loading, and for error, I'll rename it to location error. So I'll say if location loading, I'll show some skeleton over here, right? So let's just create a separate component for weather skeleton. So over here in the components, I'll create a new file called loading-skeleton.tsx. And we will make use of our skeleton from Shadcn UI. So it's going to be a very simple component. Let me show you what I'll do. So I've imported this skeleton from /UI/skeleton. And here in this weather skeleton, we have a div with some vertical spacing of 6. Inside this, I have another div, which will be a grid, right? So if you remember, let me show you. Inside of our actual application, if we refresh it, we have these different sections over here, right? For loading. For the first section, I have 2 skeletons over here. For the below 2 sections over here, I have this 2 skeletons right over here with display grid. In the medium screens, we will have 2 columns. Normally, we will have just 1 column. And actually above this, we can have some skeleton for our favorites as well over here. Yeah, right? You can see I forgot to implement that. So I guess you can, implement that on your own. It's pretty easy to do. So yeah, let's take this and go over here, and I'll just say return weather skeleton. Let's import it. And now let's see if I refresh it. If I click on over here, yeah, you can see that for split second over here, since we're not making any API call, we're just taking it from our browser. That's why, it's very quick. Cool. Let's work on displaying our error over here. So if we have any location error, so I'll say if location error, then we will show an alert over here. So if I go back to the Shadcn UI docs, we have this alert, which will show just like this. So we need error, something like this, right? So let's see how we can do this. Let's just take this alert from over here. And if there's any error, I'll say alert. Let's import this from /UI. Instead of alert circle, I'll say alert triangle, which signifies warning, right? Alert title, I'll say location error. Let's import this alert title. Let's import alert description. Inside this description, I'll just first have a paragraph tag, which will display the location error. And then below it, I can display a button probably, which can, enable the location. So button, let's have an icon over here for map pin, which we'll be importing from Lucid React, and class name will be some margin right of 2 and height and width. And below this, I'll say enable location. And when this button is clicked, I'll say on click and call get location, the function that we're getting over here. right? Variant, let's keep it outline. So outline, and class name to be width fit, right? So that it can fit the content. Let's see how this works out. So I've turned this location off and now refresh it. Okay, I guess, yeah, I have to say return over here as well. And now if I go back, yeah, you can see location error, location permission denied. Let's give this some styles. So for my description, I'll say class name to be display flex, flex to be column, and gap to be 4 between these. And now we should see, yeah, if I click on enable location, yeah, it won't do anything. Let's just click on reset permission and refresh it now. Let's say allow, and yeah, it's working fine. Great. So we have handled loading error, and let's handle if we have not gotten the anything inside of this coordinates basically, right? So let's just copy and paste it right here. So I'll just copy this error and paste it. I'll say coordinates. If there's nothing inside of the coordinates, then I'll show, like, I won't show this alert triangle. I'll just simply say location required. For the paragraph, I'll just say please enable location access to see your local weather, and this will be exactly the same, right? So again, this is a very edge case. If the coordinates are not provided, that is probably the system has not enabled the location, so then we will get this error. Okay, all right, now what we want to do in this component itself, we want to fetch the data related to my current location and the forecast that we are going to be making. And again, first of all, we have this latitude and longitude, right? So we want the reverse geocoding API to work first and get the name of the city, right? So all of these 3 APIs. So again, we are not going to be handling this directly since this tutorial is all about React query. So that is exactly what we will be using. So inside of our hooks, I'm going to be creating a new file called use weather, and I'll show you how effective React queries and handling these things. And actually this will be .ts, not tsx. So ts. This can also be .ts. Now inside of this is actually one of the most important code of this video, right? So this is where React query comes into picture, and you need to properly understand how you can use it. So React query provides us with a hook called use query that we will be using for fetching our data. So let's just create first hook over here called use weather query. This will take our coordinates. Let's import our coordinates type just like that. Oops, sorry, it should be export const or export function actually. Use weather query. Okay, if the coordinates are not present, it could be possible that they can be null. So I'll just say or null. Now here, I'm going to be using this use query, which comes from Tanstack Query. And this thing right here takes a few things. So inside of this, we have an object. And first thing that it will be taking is a query key. So if you watched my complete React query tutorial, I've explained that thing over there as well, that every single query that we execute has a query key. Like in this case, we can name it, let's say, weather, right? So later on, when we want to say that, okay, this weather query will only last, like it will only remain fresh for 10 minutes, and after that refetch it, we can use this ID right over here, or this key right over here. And this will help us in functionalities like caching as well. So for a particular city, let's say if I saw the weather of New Delhi, right, for a city page, and then we came back to some other page, or we went to some other page, like let's say Kanpur or UAE or some other page, right? Now again, let's say if we went back to that New Delhi page, I want to make sure if we are inside of that fresh data time limit, like let's say it fits 10 minutes, right? So if we have visited that page under the interval of, like, under the time limit of 10 minutes, I don't want to fetch the weather for that particular city again, right? I want to see that data. So what will we do over here is we will provide a unique key for each and every city with respect to its latitude and longitude over here, right? So instead of writing these keys over here, I will create an object right here. Also, one thing that you might be thinking is how will we define this fresh data and the caching and all of these configurations. So basically over here inside this app.tsx, here in the query client, this takes a object inside of it with default options, and inside this we have queries. So over here, we will provide a few things. So let me show you. First thing is going to be the stale time. So if we hover on it, it's going to show you the time in milliseconds after data is considered stale. If you set it to infinity, it will not fetch that data again, right? And it will just make it infinite fresh. But if after 5 minutes, so again, the example that I gave you, like for example, for that New Delhi, after 5 minutes, if you visit that page again, it's going to refresh that. We have garbage collection time, the time in millisecond that unused inactive cache remains in the memory, right? Let's say if we have New Delhi and we have set it to 10 minutes. So after 10 minutes, we will remove that data from our memory. Retry is false. So if it's false, the failed query will not retry by default. And if it's true, if any API call fails, then it's going to retry again. So I've kept it false, right? We don't want to retry. And refetch on window focus again. So this is true. Like for example, if we went to some other window and we came back to this window, it's going to fetch a queries, right? So I've kept it false by default. So this is some of the configuration that we will provide it. Now coming back to this over here, as I mentioned, I'm going to create a separate object for this, for creating the keys. So I'll say export const weather underscore keys. Inside this, we have for weather, like for this particular API, I'll have a weather key. And this will actually be a arrow function, which will take the coordinates. So I'll just take this, let's just say coords, and over here, this will generate a key for me. So like this, I'll say whether it will take the coordinates, right? So I'll say comma, the unique coordinates. And I'll say as constant. Okay, so I'll take this and I'll say dot weather and I'll provide it with the coordinates right over here. If the coordinates are not present, I'll just provide some empty. So lat long of 0 and 0. Now this is the query key. After this, it takes a query function. So this is basically the main thing over here that will be run when we run this query, right? So this is going to be the API call. So let's invoke our API. So first of all, I'll check if the coordinates are there. I'll take the weather API. So if you remember, we created this class, right? Weather API. So we have imported it right over here. Then I'll say dot get current weather. This is the API that we will be needing over here. And I'll provide this with the coordinates. If the coordinates are not present, I'll say null, right? This will invoke the API. And then I'll say this will only be enabled if the coordinates are present. So I'll say not coordinates, right? Only if the coordinates are present. So if you hover on it, you can see. Set this to false to disable the automatic refetching. And it defaults to true. Okay, so it will be set to false if the coordinates are not present. All right, let's just return it. Yeah, simple enough. And similarly, I'll create the functions for my, forecast and reverse geocoding. So let's just duplicate it. This will be for use forecast query. It will take the coordinates over here. Instead of weather, I'll say forecast. So forecast. And obviously this does not exist. So I'll go on over here. I'll duplicate this for my forecast and I'll use that right here. And the function that we'll be calling is get forecast coordinates else null. Similarly, I'm going to copy and paste it right here for my reverse geocode query. Instead of this forecast, now I'm going to have the location. So let's just duplicate it again. And over here, I'll put location and this will be location. Instead of get forecast, I'll say reverse geocode. Again, this, if you remember, we created it right here. Pretty simple stuff. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. You see how easy it was to create. And this whole thing as well, I'll say as constant so that this cannot be changed. Okay, yeah. Let's take these queries and fetch the data for these queries. So over here in my weather dashboard, let me just remove this console log from here. Right above this handle refresh. So let me show you. First of all, for my use reverse geocode query, I'll provide it with the coordinates and I'll say const location query equals use reverse geocode query. That's all. That is all we need to do. Let's just go on and console log this location query and let me show you what this is all about. So I'll go to inspect and console. What's wrong? Let's refresh it. Okay, we have some object over here. If I open it, we have the data Inside this data, this information that I'm from Gurugram, you can expand it even more to see, more information regarding that particular location. Great. Let's just get our weather data and our forecast data as well. So I'll just say use weather query, import it, and use forecast query. And I've named them as weather query and forecast query. If I go on and console log this weather query dot data, and let's see. Yep, we are getting all of the data related to this. So first of all, let's just first when we have this handle refetch over here, right? I'll just say weather query dot refetch whenever we are doing this refresh over here. So I'll say forecast query dot refetch and location query dot refetch as well. And if you remember, we had this over here, right? This dev tools. Now if I click on it, you're gonna see it is fetching all of this information right over here, and you can click on any particular API to see more information about that particular API. And you can see it shows me it is fresh currently, but it will be stale after whatever that we have added in the configuration 5 or 10 minutes, right? And let's just add some appropriate indicators when this is reloading. I think it should be working just fine. If I refresh it, okay, I don't think it's working. I think I need to add separate errors for this. So right below all of this, first of all, I need the name of this location, right? So I'll say const location name wherever I am right now. So I'll say location query dot data, and let's just add a question mark dot 0th index, and we'll get the location data. Sorry, location name. Now after it, I'll say if weather query dot error or forecast query dot error, then I'll show this alert. So let's just copy it. Actually, not this one. I'll just copy this one over here and say return this thing right here. Inside this, I'll simply say error. And for the paragraph, I'll say failed to fetch weather data. Please try again. And we will have the button to, retry. Let's say retry. Instead of map pin, I'll say refresh CW. On click will be simply handle refresh. If the weather data and forecast data is still loading, I'm going to show that weather skeleton, right? So if not weather data and not forecast query dot data, return this weather skeleton. Let's see. Now we should properly see that skeleton right here. Yep, you can see. If I click on this, is it not working? What's wrong? Handle refresh. Okay. Also, we need to add this disabled over here, right? So I'm going to say if weather query is fetching and forecast query is fetching, then this will be disabled. And over here, we can spin this thing. So I'll put backticks over here, and I'll say in the template string, I'll say weather query dot is fetching, not fetched, is fetching. And I'll say animate spin, else nothing. So now if I click on it, yep, you can see it's fetching again, and it shows me that indicator that it's being fetched. Great. So yeah, you see how powerful is React Query. It provides us so many things right out of the box, like refetch, handling the errors, is fetching data, and bunch of different things. Now let's go on and use all of this data and render them right over here and display our current weather, hourly temperature, forecast, etc. So over here, I'll create a div. Let's just remove it from here. So inside this div, I'll have two divs actually. One is going to be for the current weather and hourly temperature. The other div is going to be for let's say details about the weather and the forecast of the weather. Okay, this will have class name of display grid, and gap is going to be 6 between them. So let's go ahead and create the component for current weather first. So actually I'll just say current weather, and this will take a few things. First thing first, the weather data obviously. So weather query dot data and the location name. So location name, which will be location name, just like we have calculated right here, right? So let's create this component over here in the components folder. So I'll say current weather dot tsx rafce current weather, and this will take data and location name. And let's define the props for this. So I'll say actually right on top of over here, I'll say interface current weather props. Inside this, we have the data. So data will be the weather data, right? So we have already created the type for it. So weather data. So import type weather data, and we will have the location name, which will be a geocoding response, which we have already also created. And this will be actually optional because this will not be provided to, I think, the city page. So let's take this and put it right here. And let's import it over here, just like this. And if I go back inside of it, and let's just first see if it's imported or not. Yeah, it's imported, current weather. And let's take out the things first that we are going to be needing from inside of this data, right? So const and data, and inside this object, first of all, inside of which we have the current weather. We will have things like temperature, feels like, temp max, humidity, which will come from this main object, and from wind, we will going to be taking out speed. Now, instead of this div, I'm gonna have a card over here. So if I go to the Shadcn UI docs, we have a card component. Yep, there we go. This card component over here. Let's take the code for it. So I'll copy this card component and paste it right here. Let's import it. We don't need the card header. We just need the content. And we also don't need the card footer. So let's import it. And I'll just simply say class name is overflow hidden. Okay, now inside this, we will be rendering all of our data. Let's just give this content class name of padding to be 6. And here I'll have a div. Now this div will have two different sections. So let me show you. It will contain the information about the location, the temperature, the icon regarding that particular weather, right? So let's go back. So I'll say div class name to be grid. By default, it will have one single column in the smaller screens, but in the screens bigger than medium screens, I'll say grid columns to be 2 and some gap of 6 between them. Inside this, I'll have another div, which will have class name of space y to be 4. And then inside of another div, we will keep our, location name, location state, location country, etc. So this will have class name of space y to be 2. And now we're going to have two divs. First one will have location name and location state. Other one will not be a div, it will be a paragraph. It will have the country. So first a div and other will be a paragraph. So inside of this first div, first of all, this will have class name of display flex and items to be center. And inside of it, I'll have a h2 tag, which will simply say location name dot name. Let's keep it optional chaining. Let's see. If I go back to my app, yep, we can see the name of the location. If this thing has the state, I'll render the state. So I'll say location name dot state. Then I'll have a span tag with a comma. I'll say location name dot state, and this will be text muted foreground so that it's not that much highlighted. Yep, just like that. Then for this paragraph, I'll simply say location name dot country, and this will be text small and text muted foreground as well. So like this. Cool. For this h2, I'll have the class name of text to be 2xl so that it's a little bit bigger. Font is going to be bold and tracking tighter so that they're a little bit closer. Yep, just like that. And actually, instead of this center, I'll keep it as items end, and let's keep gap of 1. Let's see. Yeah, that looks better. Now below this div right here, I'll render other details like feels like and temperature and other sort of things. So I'll create a div over here with the class name of display flex, items to be center, and some gap of 2. Now inside this, I'll have a paragraph, and here I will render my temperature. So simply inside this paragraph, I'll say temp that we've taken out earlier. And now if I go back and see, it's 25.01. So let's just format this temperature. So I'll create a function over here called format temp. This will take the temperature and it will say math.round, and it will add this degree symbol as well over here. So I'll say format temp and just provide it with this temp over here. So now, yeah, we can see it has been rounded off. Let's give this some bigger size. So I'll say text 7xl, font bold, and tracking to be tighter. So now, yeah, we can see 25 degree. After this, I'll have another div over here, which will render, how the temperature actually feels like. So this div will have class name of space y of 1. And inside this, Inside this div, I'll have a paragraph tag, and I'll say feels like, and just render this thing over here. Instead of temperature, I'll say feels like. So again, this has also been taken out of this main right here. So now if I see, okay, let's style it a little bit. I'll say class name to be text small, font to be medium, text to be muted, foreground. Okay, yeah, like that. We want to have one more div after it, which will contain, minimum and maximum temperature. So I'll have class name of display flex, gap to be 2 between them, text to be small, and font to be medium. And inside of this, first of all, I'll render this arrow down icon, which will show the minimum temperature, right, with height 3 and width 3. And this span will simply have display flex, item center, some gap of 1, and text blue to be 500, and with the minimum temperature. And similarly, I'll have another span right below this. So this will be arrow up for displaying, the max temperature. This will have text red of 500 and temperature max. So let's see. Yep, just like that. Now after this div right here, I will display the humidity and the wind speed. Right, so I'll have a div which will have another div for humidity. So over here I'll render an icon for for denoting the humidity. So droplets, let's import it from Lucid React. So height 4, width 4, text blue of 500. Let's see, yeah, like that. And then after this I'll render a div which will say space y of 0.5, and I will say heading humidity and humidity percentage. So this variable, again, this comes from the data that we have destructured above. This will have small text and font medium. This will have small text and text muted to be foreground. For this div, I'll give some class name of display flex, items to be center, and gap to be 2. For the parent div, I'll say class name of display grid, grid columns to be 2, and gap to be 4. Let's see how this looks like. Yep, that is exactly what we wanted. Similarly, I'm gonna have another div below it. So right below this, I'll have another div which will render the wind speed, right? So make sure to import this wind from Lucid React. And inside this div, I'll have wind speed and speed meters per second, right? It's pretty standard and simple stuff. Not much going on over here. That's why I'm quickly importing these things over here. So now, yeah, you can see it looks awesome. Now let's just render the image for this particular weather, right? So right above this card content, I'll have a div. Actually, not over here. After this, I'll have a div and have another div inside of which it will contain the image. And this image right here, so I've taken it from the Openweather API as well. So they have this /image/wn. So let me show you. So I'll say src equals, I'll put a backtick over here and just type it like this: openweathermap.org/image/wn, and slash we can get for the current weather. So I'll say current weather dot icon, and then we can provide the size. So I'd say @4x.png, and this will give us that particular image. Yep, you can see the weather is haze, I guess. That's why it has provided us this. And then below this image, I'll have a div with a paragraph which will say current weather dot description, which will say haze. Oh, sorry. This is class name absolute, so this needs to be relative. So I'll say class name relative and display flex, and as ratio is going to be square, that is 1:1. Width is going to be full, and max width that it will be taking is 200 pixels, let's say. So 200 pixels. Items are going to be in the center, and justify center to align them horizontally and vertically both. So like that. For this parent div as well, I'll say class name display flex, flex column, items to be center, and justify to be center so they are in the middle. Yep, just like that. Now for this image, I'll give some alt tag of current weather dot description, and class name will be height of full, width full, and object to contain, so the image does not get distorted. It's like this. Okay, looks good. If I refresh this, this works fine. Okay, so this was the current weather component. Now we're gonna go on and if I scroll down over here, we're gonna build the hourly temperature component. So I'll go right over here and get a new file for hourly temperature.tsx. Right here, I'll create a function called hourly temperature. Okay, let's go on and import it right here. So, what are all the things that this will take? This will just be taking our forecast data. So, here we go, forecast query. So, I'll say data equals forecast query dot data. Cool. Let's import it right here and go inside of it. And here in the props, I'll take the data. And this will obviously be a forecast data, right? So, we already have created a type for that. So, I'll just say interface hourly temperature props and I'll import this forecast data type. Okay, let's take this and assign it right here. Now, one thing, if you remember, in our final app, the hourly temperature is shown using this graph right here, right? So we're going to be using Recharts library, Recharts for creating this graph. So let's see how we can work with this. So if I go to guide, we can install Recharts by npm install Recharts. Okay, let's go and do that. I'll paste it right here. Also, one more thing that we'll be needing is date-fns. So this library basically will help us to format our dates wherever necessary. And this makes it super easy and press enter, right? So let's wait for it to install. And if I go back over here, click on getting started, you can see this is how you can create a graph, basically a line chart, right? And there are different types of charts. This takes different types of variations. When it comes to charts, we can provide all of these data values and stuff, right? So I'll show you how you can provide all these things. So in the code, first of all, over here I'm gonna be having a card component from Shadcn UI, so UI/card, and I'll also have a card header basically. So let's just take it from right here. So just copy this thing up and paste it right here. And we are going to be needing the card title, not going to be needing the description. We're going to be needing the card content, and we're not going to be needing the card footer. Let's import the card title as well. Okay, this title will simply be today's temperature, and I want this card to take some space, so I'll say flex to be 1. So let's see how it looks like. Okay, it's right here. Let me just provide some display flex in the weather dashboard. So in this div right here, I'll say class name to be display flex column in the smaller screens, and in the larger screens I'll say flex row, and some gap of 4 between them. Let's see now. Yeah, that looks good. Let's go back to our hourly temperature. Inside this card component, I'm gonna have a div. Let's give it some height and width. So height will be 200 pixels and width will be full, like whatever space is available for it, it will fill the width. Now inside of this, I'm gonna say responsive container, and this should be imported from Recharts. Okay, I guess I'll have to manually import it right here. Okay, import responsive container from Recharts. So what this will basically help us do is it will make our graph responsive. So let me show you. So first of all, let's just give it some width of 100% and height of 100%. Okay, now inside of it, let's start creating our graph. So as we saw in the example, we're gonna be using something called as line chart, right? See, just like this. So let's just copy it up and I'll paste it right here. Let's just import it from Recharts and this line as well from Recharts. We don't need this width and height over here, but we do need this data. So we need to prepare this data. Let's call it chart data. And let's take this chart data variable and right over here. So const chart data equals, I'll take this data right here and I'll go inside of this list that it has inside of it. So you can see with this date and weather data, weather, wind information, etc. right? And since this data is in the interval of every 3 hours, so for 24 hours, we will need the first 8 items, right? So I'll say dot slice from 0 to 8. Then I'll map on it. So I'll just say map and I'll return an object from inside of it. So I'll take one single item and I'll return 3 things. First thing is going to be the time. So time I will format, and this format will come from date-fns. So where is it? I guess I'll have to manually import it. Import from date. Oh, I think I installed data.fns. Oh, my bad. I should have installed date.fns. Right, so let's just install the correct package. All right, and uninstall the data. So uninstall data.fns. Okay, So we would need this format, right? From date fns, so wait, date dash fns format. Okay. So over here for the time, I'm converting first of all this date timestamp into Unix format, and then I'm creating the new date out of it. And then I'm saying, give me the format in HA. So basically H means the hour and A means the AM or PM. And then this format from date fns will format it in the readable format, right? We are rounding off the temperature using mass.round, and the fields like temperature as well. So we're going to use this chart data right here. Let's give this data. We have already given the chart data, and inside of it, so this line will be used later on. First of all, we need to define the x-axis and the y-axis. So x-axis, this will basically be for the time, right? So I'll say data key will be time. It will have a color or a stroke of a color. So I'll say stroke to be, you can use whatever color that you want. I'm just putting 888888. We'll have some font size of 12. Tick line, there will be no tick line, and there will be no axis line as well. Similarly for our y-axis, we're providing the same stroke, some font size, some tick line false, axis line false, and we're going to format the value that is going to be the temperature, right? So I'll format it using this degree symbol. Let's see if we can see anything right now. Yeah, we can see the x-axis, but not the y-axis because we have not, populated the data over here. Also, one more thing, if I take you right here in the deployed site, you can see we have this tooltip icon. When we hover on any of this section, we can see this temperature and feels like right here, right? So let me show you. After this x-axis, let's just first, I'm going to say tooltip over here. I'll add it later on. First, let's try to create the graph, right? So I'll say line. Inside this line, first of all, for x-axis, inside this line, first of all, let's do for our temperature. So type will be monotone. You can see we have a bunch of different types of lines over here, right? Data key will be for the temperature. We can provide the color to this line, the width to this line, and dotting is going to be false. So yep, there we go. If I provide dot to be true over here, you're gonna see, we can see our points just like this. So let's keep it false only. Now we also want for, feels like we want for the temperature and feels like as well. So I'm going to add another line over here. The type is going to be monotone. Data key is going to be feels like, some stroke color, some stroke width, dot is going to be false, and some stroke dashed array. Let's see how it looks like now. Yeah, you can see we have different lines indicating both of them, and you can see the dashed array right over here. Okay, let's create the tooltip when we hover on it so that we can see the value for both of them. All right, now I'm going to show the tooltip, and this tooltip also comes from Recharts. So you can see we have from /UI tooltip. We actually are going to be importing from Recharts. We don't need the Shadcn UI tooltip. So this tooltip will have a content right here. Inside this content, this will take a callback function. This callback will have active and payload. So this payload right here is the one that contains both of our value. So this is an array, right? So over here, I'm going to check if it's active and payload is there, and payload has something, right? So payload.length. And then inside of it, I'm going to return this. So return, and I'll have a UI over here to display it. Oops. So it will be a div. Inside this div, I'm going to have another div. And then I will have one more div which will contain both of our temperature and our payload value, the first value. So this one will have a span, and the other one will also be a span, right? So this one will be a temperature, and here we will add the value of the temperature. So payload of 0 dot value, and this will have a degree symbol right here. So let's see. If I go on over here, yep, we can see the temperature. We have to style it obviously, but first let's do the same for our feels like as well. So I'll say feels like, did I multiplied two divs over here? I guess I have to remove this one. Yeah. Okay, so feels like, and the payload 1. Let's see now. Yep, that looks awesome. Let's style these. First of all, for the parent container div, I'll say rounded large, some border, BG to be background, and padding to be 2, some shadow of small. So now you're going to see we'll have some sort of container. Yep, just like that. For this div, so actually this div will be wrapping this up just like this. Yeah, so this will be a grid, right? So I'll say class name to be grid, and I'll say grid column to be 2. and some gap of 2 between them. Okay. This div will have some flex and flex column. Same for this one as well. For this span, for temperature, I'll say text to be 0.70 rem, uppercase, and text muted, right? So it's a little bit dull. Same for this span as well. Let's see. Okay. And simply for the values, I'll just say font to be bold. This one and this one as well. Let's just make it small. Okay, now let's see. Okay, cool. This is exactly what we wanted. Awesome. And if this is not the case, I'll just return null. All right. And yeah, I think that's pretty much our hourly temperature component. Let's work on this weather details. So in this, we will be showing, the details about that particular city, like for in this case, my location. So sunrise, sunset, wind direction, pressure. This should be pretty easy, right? So I'll just create a weather details component right here. And this will simply take the same weather query dot data. Let's create a component for this. So weather details dot tsx, RAFCE, weather details. Okay. So for this one, I'll have props of weather detail props, and this will contain the weather data, again coming from the types that we have already created. So let's just assign it right here. So I'll take the data and weather details props. Let's import it right here, and inside of it, I'll take out all of the information that we need from inside of this data, right? Which will be wind information, the weather information, and the information like sunrise, sunset, and the country. Now, before going on and rendering them right here, I want to create a basically a data with different icons and stuff. So if I show you, we have different icons over here, right? So let's just create an object for this. So I'll say const details equals, and I'll create an array over here. Like for example, for sunrise, I'll say title to be sunrise, and we will format the time of sunrise. So this format time function is like very simple. I'm just formatting the time so that it seems like hour, minute, and then AM, PM, right? So simply over here, we're going to take this format from date-fns. So import format from date-fns, right? And I'm saying new date by converting it into the Unix timestamps, and I'm saying hour, minute, and the AM, PM, right? That's all. And this sunrise icon from Lucid React. Similarly, I'll have for sunset as well. Let's import the sunset icon, and I'll say sys.sunset. Now we will need the data for wind direction and pressure. So wind direction, basically we need to calculate if it's north, south, northeast, southeast, west, northwest, right? Different things, right? So for that, I'll have to create a separate function over here, const get wind direction equals, and this will take the degree of the wind that's been going on. So it will be a number, and inside of it, how many types of direction can be there? So we have all of these different types of directions, and I'll simply say const index equals math dot round. And inside this, notice like this might be a little bit complex for some people. First of all, I'll take the degree and I'll mod it with 360. And with respect to that, I will calculate, which direction this is. If it's less than 0, then I'll say degree plus 360. I'll add it. Else, I'll just say degree. And I'll take this whole thing in the bracket. So just like that. And I'll divide it by 45. And then I'll say mod 8 over here. Now, what have I done over here? So here, first of all, I'm saying if the value of degree is more than 360, right? So that let's say if it's 361, right? So by modding it, I will get 1. And then if it's, it's more than 0, I'll say add 360. If it's not more than 0, I'll just take the original degree, right? So this basically guarantees us that our degree will be between 0 to 360. And then I'm dividing it by 45. It's because if you see in a compass, there are 8 things, right? Like north, northeast, east, southeast. These are 8 values that can be there. So when we divide it by 45 degrees, it will give us a number from 1 to 8 so that we can choose it from over here. But that number can be in decimal as well, right? So that's why I am modding it by 8 so that that number is a whole number from 0 to 7, right? Now, in the end, I can simply return the directions of this index, like whatever it is, I will take it right here. And then after it, I'm going to have another data for wind direction. I'll say get wind direction function that we created, and I'll provide it the degree of the wind. So it will say like north and then whatever the degree is, right? And then I'll take this compass icon from Lucid React. And then after this, we will have the pressure, right? So I'll say title to be pressure, value to be whatever the pressure is for that place. I'll take this gauge icon from Lucid React and then the color, right? So yeah, I think that should be good enough. Let's go on and render this. All right, cool. Now let's take this details and go on and render it over here. So again, I'll have a card component right here. So I'll go to Shadcn docs and take the card. So let's copy it up and replace it right here. We're not going to be needing the footer, not going to be needing the description. And let's import all of these other things, card and card content. Okay. For card title, I'll simply say weather details. Inside of the card content component, I'll render all of those details. So I'll have a div first of all and say details dot map. And I'll take the one single detail and here I'll say return div. Inside this div, we will have the following things, right? An icon, the title, color, and the value. So first of all, let's render this icon right here. I'll say detail dot icon like this. Let's see if this is being rendered or not. Yep, it is being rendered. Let's give this div some class name of grid, gap to be 6 between them, and in the smaller screens it will just be from top to bottom, but in the media like screens bigger than smaller screens it will have 2 columns. So like this. Yep. Then over here for this div, first of all I'll have a key of detail dot title, and I'll have a class name of displayFlex, items to be center, gap to be 3. It will have some rounded edges with the border and some padding to be 4. Yep, that's right. For our detail dot icon, we will have some height and width of 5, and we will give it the dynamic color that we have chosen right here, right? So that it looks pretty good according to that. Then after this, I'll have a div inside of which we will render the detail title. So I'll have a paragraph for detail dot title and another paragraph for detail dot value. Let's see how this looks. Okay, it's pretty big right now. Let's style it. So for the title, I'll say text to be small, font to be medium, and leading to be none. So what is this leading? It's basically line height of 1. For the value as well, I'll say text to be small, text to be muted so that it's a little bit dull, right? So yeah, like this. Awesome. Let's go on and display the 5-day weather forecast box right here. So for that, I'll go back to my weather dashboard, and over here, I'll say weather forecast. Obviously, it does not exist yet. I'll say data to be forecast query dot data. Okay, let's take this and create a component right here. I'll say weather forecast dot tsx, RAFCE, weather forecast. Okay, looks good. Since we are providing it with the forecast data, so simply it will have this thing. So forecast data, right? So I'll just say weather forecast props to be the forecast data. Let's import this forecast data from the types, and then I'll take the data right here and just assign it with this weather forecast props. Let's import this component right here as well. And now we also need some class names over here like display grid and some gap of 6. In the medium screens, it will have just 1 column, but in the screens bigger than medium screens, we're going to have 2 columns and item start. Let's see. Yep, that's right. Let's go to our weather forecast component. And here, first of all, we need to calculate the daily forecasts, right? So over here, I'll say const daily forecasts, and I'll have this data dot list, and we will manipulate this data to get forecast by day and daily min and max forecast, right? So currently we have hourly forecast for every 3 hours, right? So that's what we're gonna do. So I'll say reduce over here. Inside of this, I'll take the accumulator and the current forecast. Let's take this callback over here, and for the initial value, I'll take the empty object. Okay. So now first of all, we need to format the date, right? So in this forecast, we had .dt, right? So I'll say const date equals new date, converting it to the Unix time format, and year, month, and day format, just like we just want the date, right? So let's import it from date-fns. So after this, I'll say if accumulator does not have that particular date. It's also not date. So for that, if the data is not been generated, we do something else. We do something else. So first of all, if the data is not generated for that date, so accumulator dot accumulator of date, and inside of it I'll have multiple things which are temperature, like minimum temperature, which will be forecast dot min temp, like temp min, temp max, humidity, wind speed, weather details, and the date. Else, if we already have that date inside of this accumulator, that is, this is some other time slot, like for example for today, if I have, let's say, 5 different hourly, so there are actually 8 different values for a particular day, right, in this forecast data. So I will have different min temperature and max temperature for every single hour, right? So what I'll do here is I'll say accumulator date dot temp min, and I'll compare the previous minimum temperature and the current minimum temperature for that particular hour, and I'll take the minimum among them, and same for max as well, and in the end I'll return the accumulator. And this is giving us error that this is any type. Okay, let's just create the type for this accumulator. So it will just be all of these things right here, right? So I'll say interface daily forecast, and it will have a date, minimum temp, max temp, humidity, wind, and the weather as well, right? Simple enough. Let's take this, and in the end I'll say the initial value will be as record. It will have a string, and the value will be daily forecast. Okay, now it won't give us any error. So yeah, now we have this daily forecast data with us. Let's go on and render it. But this is in object format, right? I believe so. If I just console log this right here, and let's go back and see. Yeah, see, this is in the object format. So we need to convert it into an array. So what I'll do over here, const next days to be object dot values, and I'll take the daily forecast. It will convert it into an array, and I will slice it for next 5 days. So I'll just slice 0,6. Okay. Now similarly, we're gonna be needing a card component over here, right? So let's just take this card component and paste it over here. Again, no need for the card footer or the card description. Let's take this card header, card title, and card content. All right. For the card title, I'll simply say 5-day forecast. For the card content, over here I'll have a div, and I will render these next days array inside of it. So next days dot map, and over here, first of all, let's just give this div a class name of grid and gap to be 4. Inside this map, I'll return a div right here with a key of date, and let's just state let's say day, not date actually. So I'll say day dot date. Okay, now what will we have inside of it? So let's see in our deployed app. So yeah, we will have the date with the the weather. We will have the max min temperature, and we will have wind condition and humidity. Okay, so obviously we're gonna have 3 separate divs over here. For the first one, I'll render the date. So I'll say p. Inside of it, I'll say format from date-fns, and I'll say new date. I'll take the current date, so day dot date multiplied by 1000, and I'll format this. So I'll say EEE, MMM D. So what does this do? This is for the day, this is for month like November, and this is for the date. So if I go back and see in our app, yep, just like that. And then below it, I'll have another paragraph which will say day.weather dot description of that particular weather. So you'll see clear sky, etc. Let's give this div some class name of display grid. Grid columns are going to be 3, obviously, as just like we saw. Items to be center, gap to be 4 between them, some rounded large for the border, right? And we have border and some padding of 4 around them. For this div, we have the paragraph, right? So I'll say class name of font medium. And for the description, let's make it capitalize. So I'll say text small, text muted foreground, and capitalize. So yeah, that looks good. Let's render the min and max temperature right here. So inside of this div actually. So let me quickly do this, right? So this is pretty simple. There's no logic involved. So let me just paste the code right here. So we have this div, and we have 2 spans inside of it, right? One for the max temperature, one for the min temperature. We have already done it in the past in this video, right? And then we will need this format temperature function, which we have already created as well, right? So let me just bring it in. So format temperature will just take the temperature and maths.round and add this degree symbol around it, right? So pretty simple stuff. There we go. We have added blue color for the minimum, red color for the maximum. And for the third one, we will display the humidity and the wind speed, which again we have already done. So I'm gonna bring it in. We have two spans inside of it, droplets for the humidity. We will say day.humidity percentage. We will have wind over here with day.wind, right? Let's see how it looks like. Awesome. This looks great actually. Let's make our screen small and everything is, see, everything is responsive as well. Awesome. See how our chart is animating when the screen size is changing. This is the power of Recharts. And let's see in the light mode as well, everything is working absolutely fine. Beautiful. Let's go on and work on the city page actually, right? For one particular city, we want to see like the temperature and we want to add it to the favorites as well. But I think before that, to work on a city, we need to have the ability to search the city, right? So we need to have a search box right here in the header. So okay, how do we do that? We would need this /direct API endpoint from geocoding API. So let's work on this API endpoint first. So I'll go back to this weather.ts, and right below this, let's just actually duplicate this. And we're not going to be needing lat long this time. So let's remove it from here. We're just going to be needing a query, which is a string. Let's remove this coordinates and these curly braces from over here. Instead of reverse geo code, I'll say search locations. In the promise, we will get geocoding response. Yeah, that's fine. And here, instead of reverse, I'll say direct. Limit will be of 5. And we will also supply it with a queue, which is for the query, right? And then we will be fetching this data with this URL. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Let's take this API endpoint, go to our this use weather hook where we are creating the queries, and let's create the query for this thing. So I'll say export function use location search. We will provide it with the query. We've been providing it with the coordinates up until now, right? But we want to search something, so we will provide it with the query. And then let me just copy this thing up over here. We will say use query, and we will say weather keys, and we will actually have a search over here. So let's just first create it. So right here, let's duplicate this, and I'll say search. This will simply take a query, which is going to be a string, and this will say location dash search. And for every single search, we're going to be storing it uniquely right here. So query. So location search and query along with each other are going to do that, like create a unique key. So now for this search, we will provide it with the query. For query function, I'll say let's do this weather API, and I'll take the search locations and search it with the query. And let's remove this null and enabled. That is, this will only run if query has length more than 3 letters, right? If you want, you can keep it 2 or 1, whatever works for you. Then yeah, let's take this hook right here, and we need to go to our header.tsx and create the search right here, right? If you remember, we left this empty space for it. So I'll say city search component, and let's go and create this component right here. City search.tsx. RAFCE city search. Okay, this won't take any props, so let's just import it right here. All right, so create this search. If I show you in our deployed app, we have this search pop-up, right? So how do we create this? So in the Shadcn UI, we have something called as command. So right here, so you can see we have a search box over here, and when we search on it, it can filter down these items right out of the box, right? So we already installed it. Let's take this code right here, and you know what, not just this, we would need a dialog, yeah, just like this. So if we press, let's say it says control command J, so yeah, it pops up just like that, right? So this is what we will be needing. a command dialog. So let's copy this, and there should be a button here somewhere, I guess, in the code. Let's see. Okay, I guess I'll just take this command dialog code for now. And right here, we will have a empty fragment, and I'll paste it right here because above this command dialog, I'll have a button. When we click on that particular button, this should open the command dialog. And this button will simply say search cities. Okay, let's just import this command dialog from /UI/command. We need the command input, command list. Let's import command empty, command group, and command items or item, sorry. All right. So first of all, let's create this state for this command dialog. So I'll create a use state over here for open and set open. Let's import this use state. We will also have a state for query, our search query. So query and set query right here. So let's see this button. When we click on this button, it should set open to true, right? So that we get a command over here. So let's see how this looks like. Yeah, if we click on search cities, yep, we can see this command dialog and we can close it as well, just like that. Great, but we need to style this button to make it look a little bit better. First of all, we will have this search icon over here from Lucid React so that we see some, search icon like this. But we want to make it look like a input box, right? So what I'll do in this button, first of all, I'll say variant to be outline, and then I'll give it some class name. So that will simply be position relative. Width to be full. Justify start and text will be small. Text will be muted foreground, just like we can see in placeholder inside of our input. In the smaller screens, we will have some padding right of 12. In medium screens, width will be 40, and larger screens, width will be 64. Right? So yeah, like this. See how beautiful it looks like. Looks like dark and light mode is broken now. So let's go to our header, and in this div, I'll just give class name to be flex, gap to be 4. Let's see now. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, that looks much better now. Great. So let's work on this. If I go back to the city search, for this command input, for the placeholder, I'll say search cities. We will for the value, we will provide the query state just right over here, and this set query to this on value change so that it manages everything right out of the box. If the query length is more than 2, then I will show this, no results found over here. So I'll wrap this, and actually I'll say no cities found. I'll say query dot length is more than 2, and also if the search is not already going on. So let's just import our query as well, the search query that we created, this use location search. So over here I'll say use location search, import it. Inside of it I'll just give the query, and this will return us with the data and is loading, and bunch of other things as well, which we don't need at the moment. Let's rename this data to locations, and I'll say if over here, if the query length is more than 2, and if it is not loading, then we can show no cities found. So let's try this out and see if we are getting any search results over here. So if I just console log the locations and just open the inspect, if I say search cities, let's say New Delhi. Okay, there we go. We get the search results for the New Delhi. Awesome. So this is working fine. Let's go on and render these locations over here. So one thing over here is we're not just gonna render the search query, the API response. We are also going to be rendering the favorites, the location that we have added to the favorite, right? We're going to search in that so that, we can get quick results. We're going to search the search history as well that we have already searched, right? And then we will show all of the response from the API. So inside of this command group, actually this one will be for favorites, and let's keep it empty for now. Or let's just keep one item over here. I'll duplicate it 2 times and separate it with the command separator. So command separator, oops, it should be imported from /UI. Let's add this to between both of these over here. Okay, so this one will be for recent searches. And for this third one, this is what we will be working on first. That is our suggestions. So inside of it, I will render the locations. So first of all, I'll check if locations and locations dot length is more than 0. If this has something inside of it, only then we will render it. Now, first of all, I will render over here. If the loading is true, I will show a loader over here. So this loader icon, I'll import it from Lucid React. And so we will have a div, which will say flex, items to be center, justify center, and some padding. And then we will show this icon and we will animate this icon. So animate spin, this is a inbuilt class in Tailwind CSS with some height and width. Right, so if I say New Delhi, let's say Delhi. Okay, we are not rendering anything inside of it currently. Let's first render the command item. So I'll say locations dot map. I'll take one single location and I'll say return this command item. So paste it right here. Let's first give this the key. So key, I'll just take, the latitude and longitude of that particular location. So let's make that a key. And then after that, so for the value, I'll say location.lat, location.long, location.name, and location.country, right? And let's just say location.name. And when we click on a particular location, so on select, we will run a function called handle select. Obviously, this function does not exist yet. So let me just create it over here for now. So const handle select. It's going to be empty for now. Now inside of this, let's just wrap it in a span tag. Above it, we will have an icon, search icon with margin right of 2, height and width to be 4. Let's see how it looks like. I've searched New Delhi over here and we are getting 3 search results for New Delhi. We need more information about New Delhi, right? So let's see, let's render the state and country. So below this span right here, I'll say location.state. If that's there, we're going to render a span with location.state and country will always be there, right? So I'll just simply render a span with the country. So let's see now. Yep, this one is Delhi, this one is Illinois, and this one is Dubai. I'm not sure if these actually exist, but this is the, search result from that API. All right, now when we click on this particular search result, we want to do something over here in the handle select. So handle select will receive some data over here. So let's say city data, and which will simply be a string. So it's going to be the value, right? So this value, if you remember, that we have over here. So let's split them from that dash that we had, right? So I'll say city data dot split from dash, and we will get lat, long, name, and country. And now we can do things accordingly over here, right? So first of all, I want to navigate it to some other page. So I'll take this use navigate hook from React Router DOM, and I'll take this navigate function over here, and I'll say navigate. Inside of this, inside of backtick, I'll say city slash the name of the city. So name. And then I'll have some search params for latitude and longitude. So this thing, so that we can, fetch the data for that particular city. And after this, I'll say add to search history. We want to do this as well, right? But we have not written logic for this. So let's go on and write the logic. But let's first see if we can click on it. And so if I click on over here, yep, it takes it to the Delhi, but it did not close. So I'll say set open to be false. Right now it should close when we click on over here. Yep, awesome. Let's go back to the home page and let's work on writing the logic for add to history. So for managing our history, actually we will be storing our search history in our local. So we will create a hook for managing our local storage over here. So I'll say use dash local dash storage.ts. And this is going to be, trust me, it's going to be very simple. We're just going to be using local storage.get item and set item, but we will write it in a scalable way, and the way that interviewers expect you in the interviews if they ask you to build a hook like this. So let me show you how you can create it. So I'll say export function use local storage, and this local storage will have dynamic type. So I'll say t over here, and instead of this I'll take a key and an initial value. Value. I'll say string for the key. For initial value, I'll keep it t, right? We don't know what the value that is going to be inside of this. Now, first of all, I'll import useState over here. Again, useState will contain the value for this. So I'll give it the value t, and the initial value of useState, I'll provide a callback over here, and whatever the key that has been provided to us, I will fetch that, right? So first of all, let me show you how this will work. So I'll take const, and over here, I'll say stored value and get stored value. So I will create this use local storage hook in such a way that we can take both of these things, stored value and set stored value. And this is how, we can manipulate our local storage. So initially, when we initialize this local storage with this key, I'll have a try catch block. So try catch. Inside the try, I'll get the value from this key if it already exists. So I'll say const item equals window.localStorage.get item, this key. And I'll say return. If we have something inside of it, I'll parse it. So JSON.parse that particular item. Else I'll say initial value, whatever the initial value that was provided to us. In catch, I will simply return the initial value with the error if there's any error over here. Then after initializing our state, I'll take the use effect. So let's take the use effect snippet right here. I'll run this use effect if the key and the stored value changes, and have a try catch block over here as well, similar to this. So I'll just take this try catch block over here. I'll remove this return. So over here, we are basically setting if this stored value changes, we are going to set the item. So now instead of get item, I'll say set item. Let's remove this. Inside a set item, it will take the key and JSON dot stringify the stored value. And let's remove this from here. If it's an error, I'll say console error. And yeah, I think that should be pretty much it. I'll just return both of these things. So stored value and set stored value. And I will use that just like we use state, right? So I'll say as const. Okay. So let's take that hook and I'll show you how we can use this. But before this, we need to write the logic for adding things to our search history, right? So for that, for managing our search history, I'll create a separate hook. So use search history.ts. I'll create a function over here, use search history. And now notice how I'll use that use local storage over here. So use local storage. I will import that hook. First of all, I'll tell it what the type of this local storage is. So this is basically a search history item. Let's create a type for it over here. So I'll say interface search history item. And inside of this, we will have things like ID, query, latitude, longitude, name of that city, country, state is optional, and searched at, like the time that is for searched at. So this is all of the things that we will be storing for our search history. And I'll also show you a very important concept of React query over here called mutation. So let me show you. So first of all, this will take a key and a value, right? Just like we saw. So let's just provide this, the type search history item, and this will be an array of all of these things. So this will take search history, let's say, as a key, and initial value is empty. We don't have anything inside of search history, right? So I'll take const, and we have returned this stored value and set stored value, right? So we can rename them as well over here. So I'll say history and set history. It works exactly the same. If you want to keep stored value, you can do that as well. Now let's define our use query for managing our search history. So inside this use query, I'm going to have the query key, obviously. So let's just keep it search history. So search history. Then I'll have the query function for adding it to our history, right? So I'll say this history. So this is the value that we will be returning it inside of over here after updating our history, right? And initial data will also be this history over here. Okay. Now after this, let's write the logic for adding to the history. So add to history right here. And this is where we will be using something called as mutation. So actually we don't need to have an arrow function over here. I'll say use mutation hook from React query. So just like this. So what does use mutation do? It's very similar to this use query over here. And actually let me just say const history query. Let's assign this to a variable. Now inside this use mutation, it takes a mutation function, or let me show you. It takes a bunch of different things. On success of the mutation, what will happen? On error, what will happen? On mutate, what will happen? We have a bunch of different things over here. First of all, we will need this mutation function where we'll be writing the logic for this. So over here, I'll say it's an asynchronous function. Let's create a callback right here. Now, what will this take? It will take a search item, right? So I'll say search. And actually, if you go on over here in this interface, we will be getting this query, right? But we cannot provide it with the ID. ID has to be generated on the runtime, right? We cannot have the ID, neither we can have the searched at. So we can omit both of them to be considered as the type of this search. So I'll say search to be, omit from Typescript. Inside this, I'll provide this search history, but I'll say don't consider the ID or the searched at over here. Now we will create a new search inside of it. So inside of this function, I'll say const new search to be this search history item type. And we will take whatever that is being provided to us in this search over here. And we will create the ID and the searched at inside of it. So ID is very simple. We're just taking lat long and date.now, and searched at is simply date.now. Now there must be other history items pre-existing over here. So let's just see if the history that we're trying to add is a duplicate of the previous one, right? And also we just only supposed to keep 10 items in our search history. So I'll say const filtered history equals history dot filter, and inside this I'll take an item, and for this item I'll say this. So if item dot latitude is equals to search whatever the search query is dot latitude, and item dot longitude is equal to search dot longitude. If that is not the case, so I've added not over here, only then return it. And then let's splice it to take 10 items only. So I'll say new history equals whatever the new search is, I'll add it to the pre-existing searches, that is filtered history, and then I'll slice it from 0 to 10. Simple enough. In the end, we will take this search history and update it. So search history, and I'll update it with the new history, and I'll return the new history over here as well for the mutation, this add to history mutation. Now we need to create another mutation for clearing all of our search history. So after this, it will be very similar to this. If I just copy it over here and paste it, this will be clear history and use mutation. Inside this use mutation, I'll have a mutation function which will say asynchronous, and inside this callback, I'm going to say set history to simply be empty, right? We're clearing the history, so it will be empty, and I'll return empty in the end. And on success of this thing, I will update the search history. And actually I forgot to do that over here. So we have as I showed you, we have different things like on success, on mutate, etc. So I'll say on success. So now why do we need this on success? Why can't we this just update it directly? So when we update our queries using React query, like using use mutation over here, it will update it, but we have to either set the previous data as invalid so that it can fetch it again, or it can update it again, or either we can go on and overwrite that data. So over here I'll show you how you can overwrite the previous data, but when we go on to implement the add to favorites functionality, I'll show you that you can also invalidate, or you can make the previous data stale so that it can fetch it again, right? So over here in the on success, I'll first of all have to create a new query client over here. So I'll say const query client equals use query client, import from Tanstack Query. Let's take this, and over here I'll say query client dot set query data. And what data I want to change? I want to change it for the search history. I want to keep the data as new history over here. And this new history will be coming from right over here. What's wrong with this? Has no properties in common with type query filters. Oh, sorry, it should be set query data, not queries data. Okay, that's fine. Similarly, I can do that over here as well in the clears history. So I'll just paste it, and for search history, I'll just simply make it empty. So an empty array. Let's remove it from over here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We will need clear history, add to history, and our history queue for our history data, right? So I'll return it from over here. So I'll say return, and inside of this, I'll first return the history, which will be history query dot data. If it's not there, I'll just return the empty array. I'll say add to history and clear history. Yep, all of these three things. Oh, that was a lot of logic to write over here. First of all, this use local storage, and then this use search history. Let's have a quick water break. All right, I'm done with the water break. Let's go on over here in the city search, and let's render our data. So let's just take right below this. I'll take that hook that we just created, use search history, and we'll take out the history, clear history, and add to history over here. Now, whenever we are searching it, let's add it to history. So I'll say add to history dot mutate. This is how you call it. And inside of this, we can provide the search data. So all of these three things. I mean, all of these 4 things along with our query and the name of the city. So I'll say query, the name of the city, the latitude, longitude, and the country, right? So we'll need this parse float to format our latitude and longitude over here. And what's this error? It says searched at is missing. Okay, let's go back over here. I think I have misspelled it over here. Yeah, it should be searched at. Now it should be fine. Yep, now it's fine. Great. So this should add these things to the history. Now let's go on and render this over here. Where is it? Here in the recent searches. First of all, I'll only render this if we have something inside of the history. So I'll say history.length if more than 0. Only then render this command group. And let's remove this heading from over here. I'll keep it inside of this. So inside of over here. And actually, let's just keep this command separator inside of here itself. If it's not there, we will not show this command separator. So let's wrap this whole thing with this fragment. Now it's fine. Inside this command group, I'll first have a div. And here I will show the recent searches and the button for clearing the recent searches. So I'll have a p tag for recent searches. Searches, and I'll have a button which will have a X circle icon from Lucid React and a clear icon as well for clearing the searches. This button will have the variant of ghost. Size is going to be small, and when we click on it, we will trigger this clear history function right here. Clear history dot mutate, and it will clear the history. After this div, we will render all of our histories. So I'll say history dot map, and inside of over here, we will render this command item. I'll say return. Okay, let's take one single item over here, and we will do the similar thing that we have done over here actually. So I'll take this command item and I'll render this right here. So instead of item, let's just say location. Instead of search, let's just show a clock icon over here denoting the search history, and let's make it a little bit muted. So text muted foreground. We're gonna display the state, we're gonna display the country, that's fine. And we can also display the time after it, right? We have the searched at. So I'll say span, and let's import this format from datefns. I'll say location dot searched at, and I'll format it like we show the month and the date and then the time. So now let's see if I try to, oh, it's showing this favorites. Let's just comment this thing out for now. Yeah. So let's say New Delhi. If I click on over here, now if I go back, it shows me the recent searches. You can see this is the history for our recent searches. Let's just style this recent searches and clear. So for this button, this div will have class name of display flex. So they are on one single line. Items to be center, justify to be between, some padding horizontal, and some margin vertical. For this recent searches heading, I'll say class name to be text extra small and text muted foreground. Let's see how it looks like. Yep, that's more like it. If I click on clear, yep, it has cleared all the searches. Great. Now we can go on and work on this city page right here. And I think we have created most of the things already, right? We are going to render all these components over there, right? So if I go back to that page again, let's go on and render it. This should not be very hard, right? So in this pages, I'll go to the city page. And first of all, to get the data for that particular page, we need this information. We need the name of the city and we need the latitude and longitude. Why are these 2 question marks over here? Let's go to city search. And yeah, okay, I have it 2 question marks over here. Okay, coming back. So over here, first of all, we need the search params, right? So I'll say use search params, and I'll say const search params. So basically this will help us to get that latitude and longitude value from over here, this lat long value, right? We need this name of the city. For this, we will be needing a use param hook from React.DOM. So this will give us that. And now we can take out the lat long from this search params over here. So after this, I'll say const lat equals parse float and search params dot get. This is how you can, extract something from the search params. First, I'll take out the latitude. If it's not there, I'll say 0. Then I'll take out the longitude. And let's keep both of them inside of this coordinates variable that we will be using very soon. So now, first of all, if you remember in the weather dashboard, over here we had this weather query and forecast query. In city page, we're not going to be using this location query, right? So let's just take both of the above and I'll just paste them right here. Let's import them over here. Let's first do that error checking that we did in the weather dashboard. So let's see. Yeah, this thing. I'll copy this up and paste it right after it. If weather query or forecast query has any error, instead of all of this, I'll just simply display fail to load weather data. Please try again. Let's import all of these title and everything. Okay. And if the weather query, forecast query, or the params is not present, I'll show the skeleton, right? So let's just take that. Let's just take this over here and where is it? Paste it here. I'll also say not params dot city name. This is the variable that we named at the beginning, right? So let's import this weather skeleton. Cool, and I think that's pretty much what we need up until now. Let's just render the UI, and it's going to be very similar to what we have rendered in the weather dashboard. So let's just copy this entire div. So I'll just copy it up, and actually, let's just take this whole thing, and we will, work after it. So let's go to city page and paste it over here. We are obviously not going to be needing this button for refreshing the location. Let's take this current weather component, and we won't supply this location name because the location name will actually be the h1 over here. What's going on? Oh, sorry, I forgot to close it. Yeah, so we will need the hourly temperature, the weather details, the weather forecast. Let's see how it looks. Okay, but we need to change the layout a little bit. So instead of this right over here, I'll just keep flex column so that we have more space to display the data of one particular city. Yep. Instead of this my location here, I'll say params dot city name, and I want to show the country name as well, right? So inside of the weather query, we have the detail of the country. So this weather query over here, right? So weather query dot data. So I'll say comma. I'll say weather query dot data dot sys dot country, and this will give us the country name. So like this. Look, this looks good. Let's just make it a little bigger. So I'll say text 3XL. Yep, that's more like it. And after this H1, I will, I'll have a div over here, which will render the favorite button. Let's just comment it out for now. So, okay, let's go on and work on this add to favorite logic. So I'll go to my hooks folder over here, and I'll create a new hook for this. Use favorite dot tsx, and we're going to be using this in a bunch of different places, like rendering favorites in our search and in our dashboard as well, right? So it's going to be very useful. So we have this export function, use favorites, and similar to what we have done over here in the use search history, right here, we will take the local storage, we will create a query client for invalidating our query, as I mentioned. We will also create a use query for our favorites. So let's copy this up. And you know what? Since this hook is very similar, I'll just copy the whole thing up over here, and I'll just paste it. And let's just work accordingly. So first of all, over here in this search history, let me just first name it. So it will be use favorite and interface search history item. Instead of this, I'll say favorite item or favorite city, we can say. And how will this data look like? It will have an ID. It won't have a query, right? It will have name. Let's just move the name above over here. It will have the lat long, country, state, and instead of searched at, I will say, instead of searched at, I will say added at. Oops, I'll keep a small for this. Let's take this and replace it right here in this local storage. Instead of history, I'll say favorite or favorites, and over here I'll say set favorites, and instead of the search history key, I'll say favorites key. Okay, similar over here as well. Instead of history queue, I'll say favorite queue, and instead of this key, I'll say this favorites key. Query function will be this favorites from local storage. Whenever that is updated, we will update our query as well. Initial data will be favorites as well, and also one thing that I'll add over here is tail time. So we don't want it to get expired, right? So I'll say infinity. It will never get stale. Our favorites will always be present over there in our local storage. Now after this, we have this add to history. I'll say add to favorite, use mutation. And here, instead of this search history item, I'll say this favorite city. So I'll just replace this everywhere, both of these places. And instead of ID and searched at, I'll say added at. Okay. Now here we're creating a new search. So instead of creating new search here, we'll be creating a new favorite city. So new favorite. We will take whatever that is over here in now. Instead of search, I'll say city here. So I'll replace this city right here. And for the ID, I'll replace this search with city as well. We don't need this date now. It's optional. If you want, you can keep it over here, right? Just like before. Instead of searched at, I'll say added at. Now over here, instead of filtering it, I will check if the city is already added in the list of favorite, cities. So I'll first check over here. So I'll say exists. If it, exists, then I want to remove it over here. So instead of this, I'll say favorites dot sum. I will take each and every favorite. I'll compare the ID to the new favorite ID. If it's same, then obviously this will return us true over here. And then I'll say if it exists, then I'll simply return favorites from over here. We're not going to be adding anything inside of it. Then after that, instead of this new history, I'll say new favorites. I'll say new favorite, and I'll add it to the favorites, pre-existing favorites list. Let's just add it after it, comma, new favorite. In the end, I'll replace it. I'll say set favorites to the new favorites and return the new favorites. On success, now this thing is going to be changed. Over here, I'll say query client dot invalidate queries. I'll steal the previous queries, and over here, I'll have an object which will take the query key, which will be favorites. Let's remove this new history from here. When we invalidate the query, it will automatically, fetch it. Now, instead of this clear history, I want to add the logic for remove favorite. Again, instead of use mutation, we will get one single city ID over here, which is going to be a string, right? And instead of this, I'll say const new favorites, and I'll filter the pre-existing list. So I'll say favorites dot filter. I'll take one single city and I'll compare. Return everything instead of this particular city, and then I'll say set favorites to this new list. So new favorites. And then I'll return the new favorites over here as well. And similarly, I'll invalidate it again. I'll just copy it up. On success, I'll paste it right here. Great. Now in the end, I'll just return for favorites. I'll say favorites queries, favorites query dot data. I'll say add to favorite, or let's just say add favorite, I guess. Let's just rename it right here and remove favorite. What's wrong with this? So favorites queries, yeah, it should be favorites queries query, I mean. Okay, and then let's just have another thing called is favorite, just to quickly check if the current city is inside of our favorites list or not. So I'll have lat long over here. Both will be number, and this will be a function. Here simply we will check this. Yeah, this favorite dot sum over here, right? So instead of comparing with the ID, I'll compare with the lat long, right? So I'll say favorites dot sum, and I'll take each and every city and I'll compare the latitude and longitude with the provided latitude and longitude in this is favorite function, right? So this will quickly tell us if a city is in favorite or not, so we can show the icon over there in the city page. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this favorites logic. Let's go on and add this button to our city page. So this city page right here, we will add this favorite button. Let's create a new file for this favorite button. So I'll say favorite button.tsx, RAFCE favorite button. And this will simply take the data, which will be like weather data, right? So I'll say interface favorite button props, and this will be just the weather data that will be provided to us. So let's assign it right here. Let's take this favorites button and render it over here. Instead of this, I'll say favorite button, import it over here, and in the data, it will take the weather query dot data and the name of the city as well. So let's just put it like this, and name to be, so we're getting this name from this params.city name, right? So that it's an accurate name, I'll just provide it through the props and not from the weather query dot data. So yeah, let's go inside of it and start building this. here, let me just import that hook that we just created. So use favorite, and I'll say const. I'll take out add favorite, favorites, is favorite, and remove favorite. And actually, I don't think we'll be needing the favorites array over here. We will just be rendering that in our dashboard page. So let's just calculate if this particular data that we are managing is in the favorites or not, right? So I'll say is currently favorite equals is favorite, the function that we created in the end, and I'll provide the current data.coord.lat and data.coord.long over here, right? The current for the current city. And instead of this div over here, I'll just have a simple button which will denote if our city is in the favorite or not. Inside of this, let's just have a star icon from Lucid React. If the city is in the favorite, this will be filled, else it will be empty. So I'll say class name, height to be 4, width to be 4, and I'll check if it's currently favorite. I'll say fill current, that is whatever the current color is in our Shadcn UI, right? So I'll fill it with this, else I'll show it as empty, that is no color. Same for our button as well. If it's favorite, I'll show the default variant, else the outline variant. And size will be icon, and I'll have some more class. Like if it's currently favorite, I'll show the background color to be yellow, and on hover, we'll show yellow 600, right? Else it will be empty. Let's see how it looks like. Okay. Yep. If I click on it, obviously nothing will happen because we have not created the function for adding it to the favorite. So let's create that function over here. Const handle toggle favorite, and let's add it over here. So on click handle toggle favorite, and inside this, first of all, we will check if it's already inside of favorite or not. So if is currently favorite, so we will remove it from the favorites, right? So I'll say remove favorite function that we are importing from the use favorite hook dot mutate, and here we will provide the lat long data. So I'll say data.coord.lat and data.coord. So if I go inside this remove favorite, you're gonna notice we're receiving this city ID over here, and that is exactly what we will be storing over here. And actually, I forgot, this over here should not be data.now because that is what the ID is going to be, right? That we are providing from over there. So data.now should not be over here, so that it matches the data that we are storing inside of our favorites. And then after this has been removed from the favorites, I will show the toast. So toast.error. So let's import this toast from Sonar, and let's see if we have configured it inside of app.tsx. We have not done that. So to use toast inside of our app, we need to, let's say below this layout, I want to import toaster from Sonar, which you already installed, right? And I'll say rich color so that it shows different colors for success, failure, warning, etc. So this one is for error, and it will show remove from favorite. Else if it's not inside the favorite, I will add it. So I'll say add to favorite, or actually add favorite over here dot mutate, and inside of it I'll provide things like name, latitude, longitude, and the country, and then we will show the success toast. So I'll say toast dot success added this city to favorites, and yeah, I think that should do it. Let's go and check it out. If I click on it, it shows added New Delhi to favorites, and it should have been added to favorites. See, it has triggered a mutation over here, and it has added New Delhi to the favorites. Great. Let's try to add a couple of more cities to favorites so that we have something to render on our dashboard. Let's go and add Kanpur. There we go. We have added Kanpur to favorites. And now let's go on and render them right over here. So inside of our weather dashboard, I'll render them over here in the favorite cities, the space that we have left for it. Favorite city, and obviously this component does not exist. Let's create this component, new file, favorite cities.tsx, RAFCE, favorite cities. Let's import it right here. Oops, just like this. Let's go back to this, and here I'll just take my use favorite hook that we created, and I'll take out all the favorite cities. So const favorites, and I'll have remove favorites as well to remove them from the favorites over here. Now, first of all, I'll check if there is nothing inside of the favorites dot length, right? If it's 0, then we will return null. Else over here, inside of empty fragments, I'll just first render the heading favorites, And then I'll have a horizontal scroll area. So scroll area that we installed from Shadcn UI. So make sure to import it from /UI. And this will have class name of width full and padding bottom to be 4. Inside this, we will render all of our favorite cities. So inside of a div, I'll just have a class name of display flex so that they are on one line and gap to be 4, let's say. And here I'll render a component called favorite city tablet. So you know what, let's just create that component right here itself, since that will only be used inside of over here. So I'll say favorite city tablet, and let's provide it things like ID, name, latitude, longitude, and an on remove function, which will simply be remove favorite function. Let's create the type for this. Let's get the type for this above over here, favorite city tablet props with ID, name, latitude, longitude, and this on remove function over here. So let's assign it just like this. Now inside of this, whenever we click on a favorite city tablet, right, we want to take user to that page, right? So for that we will be using use navigate hook. So let's import that already. And we need some information regarding that particular city over here, right? So I'll take the use weather query and provide it with the lat long coordinates so that we have the weather and is loading information for that particular city. And then I'll say return over here. Now for this div, whenever we click on this div, so on click, I want to take them to the page, right? The city page. So I'll just say over here navigate, and here inside of this simply I'll say /city /name and latitude longitude. So since we're using this as a button, so I'll just add a role of button over here so that it's good for accessibility. Tab index to be 0 so that we can focus on this particular button. And then we'll add the class name of position relative, because we're going to be we're going to be adding the cross button inside of this div, right? So that we can make it absolute and position it. That's why we're giving it relative. Display flex, minimum width is going to be 250 pixels. Cursor pointer, some items to be center, gap 3 between the items. Rounded is going to be large. Some border. Background will be of this card color defined by Shadcn UI. Padding to be 4 and padding right to be 8. We're going to have some shadow of small, transition all, and on hover, I'm going to have shadow to be made so that it looks elevated. Now inside of this, I'll have the button, and this button will contain that X icon for removing them from the favorite, right? So I'll have this X icon, which I'll import from Lucid React. Let's see how this looks currently. Here we have favorites and we cannot see anything. I think we are not rendering this inside of over here in the scroll area. So inside of this div, I'll say favorites.map, and inside this callback, I'll say return favorite city tablet. And this will take each and every city over here. First of all, I'll give this the key, and I will spread the city, whatever's the value of the city over here, like ID, name, etc., right? And we have one more thing, on remove. So on remove, I'm simply calling this remove favorite over here, remove favorite dot mutate with the city ID. Okay, let's go back again over here. First of all, let's check if we have something. If we refresh this, okay, yeah, this looks decent. Let's continue to work on it. So after this button, and actually for this button, let's just align it. I'll give it the class name of absolute. It will be right one, top one. So it's on the top right corner, right? Height 6 and width 6, rounded to be full and padding to be 0 rounded. On hover, I'll show red color, right? So text destructive foreground, and I'll have the opacity of 100 on hover. Variant is going to be ghost, and size is going to be icon. And when I click on it, so I'll have on click, I'll first of all add the event, like first of all, let me take the event and I'll say e.stop propagation, so that when we click on it, this thing does not get triggered, this navigate, right? So I'll say stop propagation first, then I'll remove it, right? So I'll say on remove function with the ID, and I'll take this toast just like we've done earlier, toast.error, remove this thing from favorite. So let's see. Yeah, that's fine. Let's display the detail for that particular city now, and the weather and everything. So first of all, if it's loading, so I'll say is loading, I'll display a loader over here, else I'll render the weather. So for loader, I'll have a div over here with flex, height 8, items to be center and justify center, and let's import this loader to icon from Lucid React just like we've done before. and show animate spin over here. Else, we will check if the weather is there, right? So this weather coming from over here, right? So I'll say if weather is there, then I'll render something. Else, I'll just render null, nothing, right? So inside of this, I'll have two divs. First one will display the information about the city. Second one will display the temperature and everything, right? So we have done this multiple times before. So let me just bring in the code for this. First of all, we'll display the icon just like we've displayed in our dashboard, right? For our weather. So weather icon.png. In the alt tag, we can show the description for that weather, and class name will be height 8 and width 8. And then in the other div inside of it, I'll show the city name and the country name, right? Now after this div, we will show the temperature and the description. So I'll say mass.round weather.main.temp with a degree symbol and weather of 0th index and the description. Let's see how this looks like. Okay, the style is a little bit off. So for this div, I'll give the class name of displayFlex, items to be center, and some gap between them, gap of 2. Let's see. Okay, let's style this one as well. I want it to be in the very right side, so I'll say margin left to be auto and text to be right. So now it should, yeah, that's fine. If I click on over here, it shows removed Kanpur from favorite. Okay, so now we will go on and add our favorites to this search over here, right? So I'll go to my city search component, and it's going to be very similar to what we have already done in the past, right? So here for this, so I'll just copy this history over here since it's going to be very similar to that. I'll just copy this up until now. Yeah, so I'll just replace this thing right here. So instead of history over here, I'll say favorites. So we have to take this favorites from use favorite, right? So on the top over here, I'll take the use favorites. Let's import use favorite. Actually, it's use favorite, not favorites. So okay. So now if favorites.length is more than 0, then let's remove this command separator, this React fragment from over here. We will not be showing this span for our searched at, and let's see, we won't be needing this clear button as well, because in command group we can just simply say heading to be favorites. Okay, now instead of this history, I'll say favorites. Instead of this clock, I'll say star icon. And let's take the color and keep it yellow over here. Let's import it from Lucid React. All of these things will kind of remain the same, but for the key, let's just say city.key or location.key. Sorry, not key, I mean ID. And yeah, I think other things should remain the same. If I click on over here, yep, we can see the favorites as well along with the recent searches. If I search new, it first gives the priority to this favorites and then the recent searches, and then it searches, things from the API over here. So great. You've learned all of these, production grade features and how to use React Query to implement all of these features. And with this, we have successfully created our climate app or our weather app in React.js. And let's go on now and deploy this on Hostinger so that we can share the link to this app with the world. So first of all, let's just change this title over here. So I'll go to this HTML file. Let's just say climate. And for this href, let's just use our logo.png. Let's save it and see. Yep, that's much better. And now I've come back to the Hostinger dashboard for my roadsidecoder.in website. And let's say if I want to host my website on a subdomain like climate.roadsidecoder.in. This is a very good strategy to host your domains and add them to your resume as well. You don't even have to buy multiple domains. So just click on over here on domains and subdomain. You can see I've already hosted my Jiffy clone that I showed you in one of the previous tutorials. So let's create a subdomain for climate. Click on custom folder for subdomain. And let's just call this folder as climate and create. And there we go. This subdomain has been created. Now let's go back to the overview and click on file manager. And this is where we will keep the files related to our, app. So inside of public HTML and this climate. Let's delete this default .php. We don't need this. Okay. Now what I want to do, I want to build my project, right? So right here, I'm going to say npm run build and press enter. Let's just close all of these files. And now you're going to notice that it has started building our app for production. Okay. There we go. It has successfully built our app. So over here in the dist folder, let me just open this folder. Okay. Inside of this dist folder. And this is what we are supposed to put inside of our file manager. So I'll just open my Hostinger, select all of these and drag and drop them right over here. You can see uploading these files, and these files have been uploaded. Right, let's go and try to open climate.roadsidecoder.in, and there we go. Our website is working successfully. Amazing. You see how easy it was. I think it was even less than a minute, right? So how easy it is to host our website and to get a custom domain with Hostinger. So definitely click the link in the description down below and check them out. And now you can take this URL and share with the world, share with LinkedIn network. Who knows, maybe some recruiter will see this website, they might get impressed and ping you for that job offer that you're looking for. And you already know, if you want to prepare for front-end interviews, click the link in the description down below and check out my front-end interview preparation course and enter coupon code WEATHER for flat 55% off.